I'd like to start this meeting of the City of Lakeport Planning Commission regular meeting Wednesday, August 9th, 2017. Linda, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Corio?
Here.
Commissioner Green?
Here.
Commissioner Wicks?
Here.
Commissioner Russell?
Here.
Chair Taylor?
Here. Okay, on to item 3, acceptance of the agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda as posted or changed?
I did have a suggestion, and if people are here from both parties, I was thinking item B, North Coast Opportunities, might be something we could handle fairly quickly before we dive into the plan. But if staff or consultants had a
Actually,
different idea,
I told them to come in around 6-ish due to the fact that
are they not here yet?
they could be here, but
Then never mind.
I guess we go on with the regular agenda.
It seemed like a good idea at the time. Thank you.
Okay.
Then I would move we accept the agenda as posted.
Okay, do I have a motion for accepting the agenda?
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda.
I have a first from Commissioner Russell. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Green. Linda, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Corio?
Here.
Commissioner Green?
Aye.
Commissioner Russell?
Aye.
Commissioner Wicks?
Aye.
Chair Taylor?
Aye. Okay, we'll go on to the communications. Is there any citizens' input?
Nothing outside of posted agenda items.
Okay. We'll go on to item 5, the consent agenda, acceptance of the minutes. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as posted?
Honorable Chair, in speaking with the administrative specialist, the minutes do appear to be incomplete, as per her words, so I would recommend that we pull the minutes for this meeting and forward them to the next month's agenda. Unless the specialist can amend it and get it to the city council by next.
We can.
Okay.
So I mean, that was my only question, is that, I mean, this will be, the portion regarding the Dollar General appeal will be going to the city council on their 15th agenda.
Right.
So, I mean, it's okay, we can leave it as draft,
Okay.
but if you guys do have the ability to make corrections to it tonight, I can ensure that those get into
No, I
the
was
city
just
council package.
by her recommendation, so if she can amend it and get it to them before, that's fine with me.
That's,
I
I
saw
have
some
a,
typo here and there. I didn't see any substantive issues with it. So.
okay, then would you call the roll?
Oh, wait a minute, I believe Commissioner Green had.
Say aye for the change, and
No, there's no change.
we're not going to do the change.
No, there's no change. Staff says that they can
Oh, okay.
send it up as is.
Okay, then I will look for a
No,
motion.
well, but Commissioner Green said there were possibly some typos.
Oh,
Okay.
ministerial typos. Do we have a motion right now, or shall I move to approve the minutes as posted? We did, okay. You either just did or we repeated it. Thanks for tuning in. So I so move.
You need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Linda, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Corio?
Aye.
Commissioner Green?
Aye.
I'm sorry, did you say aye at the same time? Okay. Commissioner Russell?
Aye.
Commissioner Wicks?
Aye.
Chair Taylor?
Okay, we're going to go on to item 6, the regular calendar. Item A, Lakeport Lakefront Revitalization Plan, OA 17-02. The Planning Commission is requested to consider the draft Lakeport Lakefront Revitalization Plan and make a recommendation to the City Council for its adoption, and this will be Dan.
I'll just say a couple quick words real quick. I'm very excited to bring this to your body and to get some additional public comment this evening. It's been a very long but fun process. I mean, we got some tremendous amount of public comment each phase of this process, and Design Workshop, our consultant, did a phenomenal job of kind of compiling all that different information, kind of presenting it to us visually, and allowing the public to comment on it once again. I'm still floored by the fact that after we got a chance to review the alternative sections, the alternative designs and stuff last summer, we got over 700 comments via our online survey and also some in regards to our physical public outreach hearings that we did. So it was a phenomenal turnout. So, and I'm excited to see a full room this evening and eager to hear what other folks have to do and say. But with that, Steve Knoll from Design Workshop is here this evening. He's got a quick little PowerPoint presentation kind of summarizing the document and going over the main points for us this evening.
Thank you, Kevin. Good evening. My name is Steve Knoll, Design Workshop. We're landscape architects and land planners. Our office is based out of South Bend, California. We do a number of these kind of community revitalization projects throughout the state in the region. So the fact that a little over a year ago we were selected to move forward with this process proved pretty exciting for ourselves, as well as working with the community, specifically with the staff on this project. I have about a 15 to 20 minute overview presentation, and of course we'll then open it for public comment or however your meeting will go. But for the sake of the audience and the residents seeing the presentation, I'm going to sit over there and talk so I can speak to it, and that way I don't distract them from the presentation. Just out of curiosity, how many people attended any of the public meetings? Excellent. So, for those of you that attended, hopefully some of your thoughts and insights were represented in this final plan. For those of you who didn't have the opportunity, hopefully some of these things will reflect some of the ideas that you think the community would benefit from in the future. So like I said, there's a 15-20 minute presentation. Introduction, we'll talk a little bit about it. So basically what I'm going to do tonight is describe in a higher level what's within the document, which is, I was told, 210 pages. But of that, 90 pages is readable. The other 120 is stats and statistics. So, and it is online. So any of you after this meeting have the opportunity to go and review that. But really give an overview about this very high level, and then spend some time on recommendations and implementations of the plan. So every project has a purpose. This was pretty easy in our situation. Is that you've done a lot of planning for this area in the past, and what we were challenged to do is come back and say what has been done in the past and how can we come up with something that's implementable and can approach developing and really have an opportunity to move forward with some of these ideas. In order to do that, we had to understand some of the existing land uses, whether it's public or private, and the current market conditions, and then wrap that into what the community needs were with regard to public outreach. This document is a vision plan with some meat, I call it. What that means is this really is something that you as elected officials could move forward with implementing parts of it. It does provide the bandwidth for your staff to go out for funding because they have something that the community can support, which is really critical when you look at the competitive funding mechanisms today. And finally, for whether it's a local resident or a business person or someone from out of the area, it really shows that the community has a vision and it would attract some reinvestment. So that's really three basic principles of the purpose of this plan. Just for context, the project area includes all the way up Clear Avenue, all the way down to C Street, and really the area that's defined out here, although there's some influences into the Main Street Business District that we'll talk about. So that was really kind of the focus area. We didn't go much further than that, but through discussions we actually come up with some connectivity things that would work out as well. And by the way, if I'm talking too fast, just raise your hand. I tend to talk fast. Project objectives. First of all, there's some underutilized properties throughout the waterfront area, lakefront area. And what are the opportunities to maximize those? That was kind of what the market assessment was doing, to say, what's the lay of the land within the city as well as the county? What are some opportunities that someone from a business perspective might be attracted to the area? We do identify short and long-term goals at the end of the document, particularly in the shoreline area. And then again, we want to strengthen the connections between the city, the Lakeport downtown area and the commercial district, and how the economic vitality of the two will play off each other. The process was, as it's described, we started with stakeholder meetings. Those are people, whether they were organizations, or in some cases, business owners along the area. Had discussion with them. We had what we call a management team, which was a core team that included our design team as well as city staff, that we met regularly to make sure we were on track with things. We did hold 2 public meetings, actually spent one day at a concert, one of your concert evenings to gather some additional information. And so we're down here tonight of getting some sort of hopefully a recommendation for you to move this forward to City Council. So when we talk about existing conditions, there's really a few critical areas. Existing land uses and ownership. So recognizing that this project area consists of both public and private properties, but from a planning perspective, we take a step back and say, how does collectively these things work together? So realizing that whatever comes out of this is not dictating what someone does with their property, but just some opportunity to see what that might have. Physical conditions such as access to the water, the conditions of the facilities, whether it's ADA accessibility, socioeconomics, we talked about the demographics of the community, who's moving here, what you're looking for in the future, how that might play into some of the economic opportunities in the future. And then we did have Rincon, which is our consultant, do analysis of just the lakefront area with regard to environmental conditions, with the idea of making sure we're not proposing something on some sensitive areas, but also on the flip side, might find some opportunity to find some funding for environmental cleanup in those areas. As I mentioned before, there was a handful of documents you've done in the past. These are just a few of them, but really the gist of it is that we took this information initially and used this in order to draw from rather than start over. So some of the challenges are, that you all from the community are well aware of, just the circulation, parking, roadway, and wayfinding. Just as a waterfront area, the best asset you have is right there, and you can see how successful Library Park is, but the remainder is really asphalt and not really as pedestrian and waterfront friendly. This project isn't to remove that, but just to see how they two can coexist. The issue of the private property existing parcel configuration, you have some large lots, some small lots, and how they disrupt some of the public realm, so to speak, and then of course the economic viability of some of the opportunities that are here. But on the flip side, I think there's some huge opportunities. You have the connectivity from Main Street to the waterfront. I think some simple solutions there to make that stronger. Enhance some of the local shop amenities. Really building out the existing uses that you have that are successful now, events, those type of things. The lakefront access itself, and then of course a collaboration with the property owners and specifically the school district. So we'll talk a little bit about public outreach. As I mentioned, we had the management team, stakeholder meetings. These are some of the meetings with the Unified School District, the summer concert, 2 public meetings. We did hold, after each meeting, we had an online survey that people for up to 2 weeks, and I think in some cases we'd like to go a little bit longer, could weigh in if they did have the opportunity for whatever reason to make the meetings. And then that's where Kevin mentioned we did receive a fair amount of response as well, which is a good sign that your community is engaged. Presentation boards, and of course the presentation to the staff. The image on the right is actually from our first work session where we had people sit around the round table, and I don't know if anyone in the audience participated in that, but we had 3 or 4 different plans come up, and people were able to put their fingerprints on what they thought were important aspects of the waterfront, and particularly the whole commercial district. So with that, we came up with 4 preliminary concepts. We're not going to go through all through those today. What I wanted to do is talk about the 4 areas that all had consistencies and made sure that each alternative focused on. One was a promenade. Really the idea about improvements that extended along the whole waterfront. In the case of the diagrams, we showed how that would happen within the public realm area, with the understanding that the idea at some point is to get from Clear Lake all the way down to C Street. Each alternative including extending the 3rd Street boat ramp to point of entrance to Dutch Harbor. There's a strong desire for the south of Lakeport C to be all the way to Clear Lake, as I mentioned, to be connected. And that was just community input and, again, reinforced by some of the online service and responses. The next area is really the city school district property proper. And it's really this this area here. And when you think about the city property, it comes all the way down here, but really what this actually plays in the scheme of things. And I should back up and say that none of these four alternatives ever, any of them have everything in it. So whatever comes out of this is going to be that flexibility that you're allowed to move forward with as opportunities present themselves. But particularly in this area, is combining the two properties to see really from that bigger perspective, and when you add them, what opportunities could happen. This would include a Front Street. Gotta go back. You're right, Kevin. I push the wrong button all the time. It includes some of this area here and how this might entertain. And they all look at some sort of connectivity as another way to get this area connected, because right now it's a dead end, as you know. Parking and circulation is looked at, and this is just one of the scenarios, but particularly in the case of, how do you connect these things, still provide the strong boat connection to launch their boats, and then different scenarios in which that storing that boat might be in different locations. Interesting enough, this whole front area here is primarily devoted toward trailers and boats, but if you just kind of flip that and made that more automobile, more pedestrian, you still wouldn't lose the capacity to do what you need to on events and just on a regular basis. And then finally, the hotel development, which you are currently have done your first draft on seeing the viability of that, but our challenge was to, in this case, to say where would that land. Three alternatives. One is, let me get this one right, the city property up here to the north. One, maybe some collective working with the property owner, something midtown, close to downtown, And then, of course, Willow Point offers a pretty nice opportunity for a pretty nice sized resort. So then we get to the recommendations and implementation. So this list is actually the list that came from the community, and I think it's in priority, if I recall. So if we look at this, the promenade first and foremost was the most popular, and we really need to address that. Then, of course, the improved public open spaces, particularly special events and just general recreation down by the lakefront area. The access part, the hotel was mentioned, and then the connectivity. Water park, that one made the list primarily because we had one scheme that was really aggressive, and there was a lot of high school students I think really liked that. But that's not to say you can't have a scale down or portion thing within the interest of water play in the area. So again, nothing was left off as being what was ranked. It's just to let you know some of the items that people thought were important. Within the recommendations, there's some general kind of higher level recommendations, and those are written about in these four key areas: tourism promotion, how you might do this, and of course, this is not just on the shoulders of the city itself. It's working with other chambers and other organizations who are promoting the area. Fundraising opportunities, environmental conclusions, and what those recommendations would lead. And then, of course, the idea about temporary facilities and special events, which I don't believe your current codes allow that to any great degree, and it might be worth refining those a bit to understand how that might play out in the future. But then specifically, we broke this into, I think it is 7 zones. We'll find out as we count. The first one is called the Resort Enhancement Zone, and this is really the area that is really primarily your hotel bed base right now. And recognizing that the number of these resort properties within the city are starting to decline and being replaced with other uses, it's important to retain some of these areas pretty strongly as being your TOT tax generator. So this plan just recognizes that you should continue to do that. Possibly work with some of the property owners if they're looking for reinvestment and redevelopment for bringing that to a different level, to a higher level, if that's what the intent is. In some cases, you can make the decision to use some TOT money to improve the streetscape to then extend that quality down further down into town. And then, of course, there's within our market assessment, there was a discussion about a conference center or an event center that might, by its own nature, bring a certain level of interest to the community. So we encourage development of that type of element in this area. Some of the long terms, identifying some of the fundings to maybe do some of these public-private ventures. It says improve and expand marina uses, and that's kind of a general term. It doesn't necessarily mean expand the marina, but the uses along the water. Expand visitor serving retail uses, all the way down to creating a hotel lodging association, which might start to, again, market the city in a different way than it is now. And this is just a few images of what that might look like. Next piece we kind of grouped and called it the multi-use event space revitalization zone. Early in the process there was some opportunity, or there was some discussions about, well, should we approach the school district and see if we can put a hotel on their site or some sort of retail commercial district. That could, of course, could play out, but I think it was pretty evident with the community input that this is a pretty special place, that to lock this up in development might do a disservice to what the community has from their own public recreation area. So this is really looking at it in the context of how that might play out. One of the things, of course, is if you do not purchase the the school district property, is to maybe work with, do an MOU with them to see how you guys can jointly go forward with some of the opportunities that have been explained in the plan. All the way down to recognizing that you need to secure some funding to take care of this little out parcel, which is right there, because that is a private property right now. So there's a short and long-term elements with that. I think the one thing is that to amend the general plan land use to really create the natural high property into resort high density residential or to open space. That's really probably, from a planning decision, that's maybe a pretty key decision to make in the future, and would ultimately affect how this thing moves forward, this property is combined. And then these are just some images. I mean, I could go back to the cover page and show the events you guys already have, which are pretty phenomenal. The public launch area, really it's this area here. How do we reorganize that to make it better attractive for the pedestrian and the waterfront experience, as well as not compromise the use it needs, which is basically it's a launching pad for vessels and other vehicles. So city adopted water. So the idea is to develop a waterfront strategic task force that usually consists of individuals and maybe a couple elected officials to really delve in a little bit deeper, because we didn't, and nor did we want to get into the just of how you would solve that. But I think there's a bigger opportunity that could be figured out. And then based on that, there'd be some opportunities to see how that might play out with regard to a connected waterfront area, not just along the lake itself, but also the downtown. Then long-term things would be such as secured funding related to stormwater management. So there is funding. I think there's some areas out there which would probably be available, might be recognized if you needed to go after that. All the way down to look at some of the ways of expanding the breeding facilities we just discussed about. And again, these are just kind of high-level recommendations and more information in the document. And just a few images of what that might look like. The special commercial development zone, this was put in place because in the context of the market analysis and some discussion that had been had from people outside the community, where would you land the best appropriate spot for some sort of, I guess you'd call it economic generator. And typically these are found in the heart of town, right downtown area, someplace that makes some sense that might have synergy with areas. In this case, not only is it fronts Main Street, but it's also directly connected to the waterfront. So you actually have a dual purpose that it makes a lot of sense. So looking at this, this is just simply, private property. Talk with the owner, say, is there something we can work on together? Are you considering something? So it was really more about understanding how that might play a pivotal role in the future. And I think with your hotel report that's coming out now, there'll probably be some more information that will help solidify this in the future. Long term, there was some discussion and some interest, and the plans, one of the early plans shows was doing some sort of community center somewhere in this area. And the idea here was that if that was wrapped into a hotel operation, then a community center in an area would have some synergies where they could use it as a conference center, and then as well as the community can use it for their needs as well. So it's a model that you're starting to see happen a lot, particularly because some of these 80 to 100 room hotels can't afford to build the conference center yet, and the community can't afford to build a community center. So it's really kind of a nice synergy you're starting to see more in other communities. Lakefront zone, this is really, it's really interesting to me because you have some of the most amazing frontage onto the library park, and yet the businesses down there seem to maybe change quite a bit, or there's just not enough density there. So this is really recognizing the importance of that. I mean, by activating this area, I think you'll see a lot of synergy between the two. So there was a number of ideas that were put out there with regard to how that might work. Just simply letting people know that they can come down to the waterfront and know these businesses exist, because they're really kind of out of sight, out of mind. And then, of course, the promenade. Really, this is the heart of what would really be a successful waterfront when you talk about people coming down and enjoying it from here all the way here. Right now, it's from here to about there. Then you have to cross, and then you really kind of no man's land, and then it's cut off altogether. So even just opening this up and starting to let people know that there's a longer portion of the waterfront that they can enjoy, just simple gestures, but then recognizing the long-term vision is to find ways to make that a public realm from this point all the way up there, working with property owners, whether it's easements or purchases, whatever that might be. But that was, again, one of the most, we heard that loud and clear. All the way down to work with, to secure funding to purchase easements that we talked about. So there's a lot of recommendations on how to put that in place, but I think it really starts with recognizing, of course, with your unfortunate winter, if you want to call it, and the promenade kind of at least in this section, is inaccessible. There's some opportunities to start with that and build off it. So I think it's really exciting to come back here in a few years and see what this will look like. And then Library Park, there's really not a whole lot we recommended with this. I think it's really more about once your elevator's in, and open that back to the public, and however you decide to reuse it. But some simple things that were mentioned by the community is putting shade structures over the picnic tables to protect them from heat, and also some of the other things that might fly over them. So, Library Park, it's a real nice facility. How you might, I think the main thing is how, let me go back, is how the library, the library interfaces with this whole thing. That'll be a key point of how you open that up and becomes kind of the heart of the focus point of the library park. And I think we got one more after this. Willow Point, again, it's really recognizing this is one of the biggest land bases you have that has some opportunity and it's all private land, so it's depending what they do, but recognize the importance of that piece of property in the waterfront area, and how that might either inform, persuade, or have discussion about working with the private owner on what that might mean in the bigger picture. So we don't need to spend too much time on that one. And then finally, the Main Street District. I think it's really to support and encourage high density, or some sort of people living downtown again. It sounds basic, but sometimes just having more bodies in the street makes some sense. I think the other element, another element, which is nothing against the business owners by any means, because this is the same in other communities, is stay open after 5 at times, because once you close, people aren't down there. So there's some opportunities maybe, and you already do that with some of the events on certain nights. So I think the more you can have those where people know that Lakeport is open after 5 will really help that. All the way down to working on providing some sort of the alleyways. Open up this area here as some sort of area that might be an area that could recreate itself as a kind of a commercial hub as well. And so that's really the presentation. Obviously, there's probably going to be tons of questions, so at this point, I'll turn over to the Planning Commission.
Okay, great presentation. So what we should do now is, if any of the commissioners have any questions of staff, start there. And then before we open the public hearing.
I just want to add before, and maybe this will stimulate some of the questions
Okay.
going forward, but I think the real, if you can go to the next slide too. One of the key breakthroughs we had, I mean, for a while there, we were just overwhelmed with a lot of information. And I think once we got to the point where we kind of divided these areas out individually and then started putting in those recommendations, I think we had a really good breakthrough. I think, like what Steve said, you know, the idea here is this is not a overarching, you know, dictation of this shall be here. I mean, this is really illustrating and writing down the community's vision for the area and giving us a template that when we do have future projects that come before this body and to the council or staff is looking at pursuing different grant funding ideas, that we have the community's vision. I mean, what is it that we want to see and feel? And that's really the test that, you know, this document really provides, is we can compare those projects in the future of how does it fit into here? How does it fit into the community's vision? Steve Knoll said directly, you know, we learned right away, something we already kind of knew, is there's a real affinity in the community for what happens at Natural High. That's not to say that no development shall occur, but there's really, you know, that's really our last big piece. It's the only piece in this area, the only piece of property where you can physically view the lake directly from Main Street. And that's something that's very important to this community, of maintaining that. So we tried to craft a vision to that respect that maybe builds on some of the great, wonderful special events that we have, and, you know, allowing some park improvements to occur. But when there's not events taking place, it's still something that remains available to the community as passive recreation. And I think another huge key piece that came out is the promenade area is first and foremost the number one thing the community wants to see. And so breaking that promenade into easier chunks, you know, working on that public area first, that's obviously going to be easier than obtaining easements and building promenades through public areas. But I think, you know, there's a lot of value there. You get pedestrians walking back and forth across that. I think that private property owners are going to see the economic advantage of having folks there too. So hopefully that's something we can build upon. There are elements that are going to apply directly to this commission. You know, it's our intent that this is not going to be a shelf plan. We want to turn right around. You'll see, I'm sure some of you already picked out, you know, there are some specific recommendations to making changes to the zoning ordinance. Specifically, I think we need to take a hard look at our R5 zoning district, the one that applies mostly to these resort zoned areas, and take a look and see if the current zoning ordinance allows this to occur. And Dan, in my review initially, is no, it doesn't right now. So that's something that we need to look at right away. The other thing, you know, we kind of passed the buck earlier when we were looking at our general plan amendment and zoning inconsistency changes. We were going to wait till this plan was completed before we really tackled what we were going to do for the zoning for Natural High. And I think we have an answer now. So that'll be coming back to you guys sooner rather than later. But there's other elements too. This plan alludes several times to the community really wants to see additional shopping, additional restaurants in this lakefront area and the Main Street area. So we need to take a look at different options. And so you see a couple times, maybe we need to consider some vending opportunities. And, you know, that may be a trial and error process. We might try something and find out it doesn't work, and we just can't be afraid to keep tweaking it and trying it until we get it to a place where it really is what the community wants to see. So I think those are some of the things that are going to come back sooner rather than later to your commission. But at this point, I think there's a lot of real good gems in here. We're already making strides on some of them. We're, you know, moving forward with the Carnegie Accessibility Project. We have the hotel feasibility study underway. I think there's some good opportunities to really tackle the promenade issue sooner rather than later.
Good. Any questions?
I have comments, not so much questions, but I have two specific comments. One is, well done. community, specifically well done to the community. This outreach and involvement is really important, and I wish we had a lot more of this for some of the other projects that come before us, but the community has spoken, and this document is a great representation of all the work and ideas that people have had. And I think that I personally have been pushing for specific planning for a long time. That's very hard to do. But this is a great flexible document that can speak to specific planning because it has so much input. And so well done on this presentation and to the groups that put it together. It's very comprehensive and it's very flexible, and in this town we need that. So that's my comment. Well done.
Anyone else want to speak?
I had some questions. Okay. Got 2 pages of them. And, you know, you give me a 200-page report, I'm going to read it, number 1. And then 2, I'm going to ask you some questions, if that's okay. First off is just defining terms. Promenade, bike trail, esplanade, boardwalk. I see the red line, and we're using kind of a placeholder term, promenade, but I'd like to explore, if you would, just the definition in terms. What we have right now, my library park is a form of promenade, but there are other forms, and there's also a boardwalk component I see in some of the other iterations, and then in some of the other study areas like Harrison Avenue, you have a vision of promenade. So could you just kind of define for myself, and perhaps for the audience, a promenade?
Yes, and it's good you asked that question because that really stemmed from the different alternatives. So a promenade is, in the case of, for instance, what you have in Library Park is a promenade. It's a somewhat of a fortified edge. It's got it fronts right onto the water. It has the interaction. In many cases, it might have a marina, which you do, but it's really confined. I mean, it's pretty defined and fairly linear in its design, so to speak. The use of boardwalks and things like that, in some of the schemes we went out, we actually had some opportunities to create a different experience, which wasn't that concrete edge, but it's through the use of materials and the experience. So particularly as you start going out along Dutch Harbor, you probably may not hard promenade concrete. There's an alternative that showed that, but that might be the opportunity to make it more of a subtle boardwalk type feeling with overlooks and stuff like that. So that's just more of a material and how that's applied. Then, of course, anywhere in between, where a couple of the alternatives we didn't have, it was more of an informal path rather than something so structured and linear. So there's some clear distinctions between when you went from the promenade onto this other area in front of the park area, then you went onto the boardwalk. So it does have a lot of variables of how you define it, but a promenade, as we're talking about in the document, should really mean that water's edge. And then the use of the different words is the materials that be applied when you get into the next level of design.
With the basic goal of pedestrian access.
Yeah,
and bike
pedestrian
access
access.
throughout that area.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Well, that answers that. And I'm not waiting for lightning to strike me here, but local preference aside, the natural high parcel, just because of single ownership and the configuration, just in terms of simple developability, versus the cross ownership and some of the buildings on other parcels. Can you just give me a bullet item of, if other than local preference, is development more possible on that type of parcel because it's relatively flat and doesn't have issues versus some of the other landlocked parcels with buildings and other things on them?
Yeah, absolutely. It's flat. There doesn't seem to be many environmental constraints, but from a pure developer perspective, it's probably simpler than, working with, of course, it obviously the school district have a say-so in it, but put that aside, it's the easiest in addition to Willow Point.
And again, before lightning strikes me, just point that out because it struck me as more developable. And some of the things that people affiliate with the desirability of that are probably general, access to the lake, recreation opportunities, what have you. And I want to honor those ideals without necessarily getting married to fulfilling those ideals on that site.
Could I just add a little bit to that? One of the recommendations, and I guess maybe another clarification terminology, this is really it's a kind of a master vision plan. One of the recommendations is the next step is actually delve in and do a detailed site plan for that piece of property And that would bring back that whole discussion back in front of the community. So if there was some interest to have a developer or development, whether it's a community center or a hotel, for instance, that would come back around with the next level of discussion.
Yeah, and I did want to note, I do appreciate, like Commissioner Wicks did, the public outreach is great, and your summation of the results is good, but I do want to notice that there's some incongruity in what the public wanted on point A and then what they wanted on point B. For example, strong support for a hotel in general, but when you drill down into the proposed locations, each of them ended up kind of least liked on the survey.
Right.
So on the broad scope, yeah, we want a hotel, but when we drill down into where it might go, not as popular. So there, so I want to take that public input in context too. And then I did have some drill down questions that go by this, and I know not everyone in the audience has this, but I know staff does, and I know you do. So if I can turn to page 53 on that, and that's very similar to that map up there. That's basically the preferred alternative diagram on page 53.
Yes.
Got it? All right. And I'm just throwing it out here for discussion just because I don't like dogleg zones. For example, on the special commercial development zone, is there any, and of course you didn't know B of A was going bye-bye at this point, but I'd probably like to propose adding that particular parcel and possibly the one just north of that. to
So adding these
special-
two
Special,
on the
yeah.
map.
Two
That
parcels.
little chunk
on
there
Yeah.
probably belongs in the special commercial development zone, I would think, and I'm gonna just throw that out there for discussion. Having done that, I'm gonna move to page 55. And just a broader discussion, there are several proposals in here to strike the high-density residential from the R5 zoning district. Maybe that needs to happen as a general update and all that. But I did read the analysis of the hotel study and what have you, and we also have a need for affordable housing that isn't discussed a whole lot in this. And what I have read of the motel feasibility is maybe at best we can get a boutique hotel that cannot sustain a conference center on its own. And on page 55 in particular, we're looking at what we would call the resort enhancement zone, which is definitely our current resort stock, but in all honesty is kind of aging stock and adjacent to residential stuff near there. So I wonder if I don't necessarily know that it's a good idea to move forward with amending the zoning district to preclude affordable housing at this point, or any type of housing at this point, just because I don't really know that the market for the hotel is so strong that we want to focus on that versus other uses there. And so I would either suggest striking the residential stuff, or I would just add a recommendation that in addition to evaluating its suitability for continued resort activities, we do take also a look at its suitability for residential, including affordable housing. Just because I'm not sure how long that building inventory is going to be with us. There's a flip side to that argument. One of the recommendations is put a hotel contiguous to that. That probably could help stimulate spending on that portion of it as the resort area. I'm just not entirely sure about that part. Page 60, and again, that's outside your scope as a consultant, but I know we've had discussions with the school district on where we go, but when I'm hearing about recommendations to do MOUs or stuff like that, I just wonder if we're kind of overcomplicating things there. I think the general, going back again to the public's desire to keep it kind of public and open and all that, that's probably where the school district would be coming to. So I wonder if, rather than having this big long MOU discussion, whether we could just have a simpler recommendation for the city to prepare a property value assessment for the LUSD-owned natural high site with the goal of acquiring it for public use, and just preclude any consideration of private use, but just say it'd be simpler for us to do that under the city umbrella than having LUSD drive.
So kind of leave the first bullet point and kind of strike the MOU.
Yeah.
I think the MOU is more about if it took a while, the school districts do to make a decision. There are some simple things by saying, hey, we're going to a future, a collective idea in the future. Are there things such as open up that area for more people to walk, little things like that. I think that was more of a short term until some decision was whether you guys did something together or the city purchased a property. So, but that's, yeah, we could easily change that.
And to add, throughout the public outreach process, we did, we gave a specific presentation to the Lakeport Unified School Board, and then we recently met with a couple of their representatives and the superintendent too, and made available these recommendations. So they've had a chance to take a look at them. It's our hope to go and speak with the full board again. But just some real general items that have come out of those discussions is they're kind of open to a lot of different possibilities. They're willing to at least listen to sort of any proposal and kind of examine it to how it fits in with their vision. I mean, they have a fiscal responsibility to their district too. I mean, in some ways, not only is it, it's not just a piece of property, it's a fiscal asset to the district as well. So they have that element to bring into their discussion. But I really like sort of the MOU outline because it kind of gives us some, sure, if finances were perfect in the world, we'd love to acquire it and have full control over it and be able to develop it accordingly, but we don't. And we don't know when or how or if that would happen. So I think in the sake of keeping some of these things moving, whether it be the promenade or opening up some of that area to better lake access, I think there's already opportunities that exist that the board is willing to consider those sort of things. So that MOU process kind of leaves an avenue, regardless of who owns it, to maybe look at some of those things.
All right. A couple quick bullet points on then. Maybe rather than develop the potential beach areas, maybe evaluate them. I don't know if we're there quite yet. And also, on some of the alternatives, I noticed the band shell, the amphitheater, special events being kind of designated for that. I'd like to add that to the bullet list of any MOU. Because part of the discussion came up is, we want to be Kanaki Harbor too and bring a really kind of big entertainment/hotel thing here. And just the overall tone of this doesn't really show that. It shows more of a boutique hotel, maybe with a community event center. But this is really on this, if there's going to be any type of public entertainment, band shell, amphitheater, whatever you want to call it, it looks like this would be where it would go. So I think we should probably be evaluating that. And then the final thing on that is, although it's basically bare grass now, in terms of lake health and all that, could we evaluate getting it back more to its riparian woodland heritage versus its cleared state? Skipping at page 83. Same question as the north end of town. We've got a bunch of hotels, may or may not be a resort area. Willow Point right now is envisioned as this, I don't know what's left of it, what's left the flooded area. It could be RV park, it could be something like that. But same thing, if the market is not there for this kind of high-tone resort retail concept, the city still doesn't have a need for affordable housing. And when I think of RV parks and stuff like that, in some senses, depending on how they are, they kind of stand in for affordable housing. So I'd like us to at least evaluate. I don't want to clear the decks on this as being, I don't want to eliminate residential uses from being considered, would be my thing. I like the idea that perhaps it could get rebooted into RV, but I think I asked you this, there's no TO2 revenue that the city gets from RV camping, is that correct?
I don't think currently we do. I mean, none of the existing RV parks are considered transient occupancy, but I mean, if you have a true transient-oriented RV park, then yes, you would be able, you'd be receiving TOT monies through an agreement with
And is there any ability of the city to police RV spaces for extended stay or permanent residence?
It's a little difficult. It's quite difficult, actually, because most of those RV parks are regulated by the state. When you RV parks, mobile home parks, all those fall in a category where they're actually regulated by the Department of Housing and Community Development. And over time, they have some provisions where they allow special occupancy permitting, where they temporarily allow resort uses to be longer term occupancy. And my experience, this is personally my experience with it, is you tend to see those devolve over time where you never get back to the resort aspect.
And just in terms of the size of that parcel again versus Natural High, let's dream big again and go Canocti Harbor. That would give you the footprint necessary to have a big mixed-use retail, even add an event center to it on that, if you could work out the property ownership and what have you.
Well, I think regardless of whether it be Willow Point or it be Natural High or the C Street property or any of those, I think what this plan really recognized is that there aren't very many parcels like this left, not only in Lakeport, but just around the lake in general. So they should be treated kind of with a special brush in that, yes, I agree, there's certainly a need for housing, affordable housing, housing just in general in our community. But at the same time, recognizing that there just aren't a plethora of lakefront parcels, I think we just need to be careful on what uses we allow in there or not. And that's not just, I agree with you, I don't think just broadly wiping out housing completely. I mean, I think especially what we've seen, the trend in these sort of resort markets, especially in an area like Lakeport where our resort season isn't as long as we'd like it to be, that you need some complementary uses sometimes to keep resort uses alive. So I agree. I think we shouldn't just blanketly throw things off the table. But right now, our R5 zoning district would allow anything that's zoned R5, which Willow Point, C Street, Natural High gets complicated, but those properties are zoned R5. Same with our existing resorts. And there's nothing stopping someone from coming in tomorrow with the development application that would be strictly housing. And then you've kind of eliminated that lakefront access permanently. So what this plan's proposing is to look at that. I mean, that would be one of those areas I already said that would need to come back. That would be a zoning ordinance amendment. So it would be something that would have to be vetted again publicly. It'd come to the Planning Commission for their recommendation and ultimately to the City Council for their approval. The kind of path that we've looked at through this is to kind of start taking a look at making sure that we put some protections in place, that we at least take some really good looks about what we permit in these areas and making sure that they're actually what the community wants to see. Because once they're gone, once you have a development in place, you're not getting that back. Once you kind of give away that public foothold, if we miss our opportunity to expand the promenade through some of these areas. I mean, look how difficult it would be to get a promenade through the north end of the section where you already have developed out parcels. It's going to be difficult. It's not impossible. I think there are some options, but I think at this point where we're really looking at these pieces is we want to be really strategic in how they're used. But I agree.
Saying
we don't want
the
to.
current R5 is any type of. I guess my thing
Well,
is.
if you drive down the
let's be
Royal, you'll
creative.
see the apartment houses. That's R5. That's R5 pretty much for this community to the maximum. The apartments at their Royal Estate.
Royal Shores.
Royal Shores.
If you wanted to bring back something to get multifamily out of there,
Well,
but there's
I
all
think
the
there's
other, there's live workspaces, there's tiny houses, there's a lot of things.
Correct. And I think
Well, there's an important aspect of this relates to the community in general, and kind of like pulls together the downtown to the lakefront and sees what's the best use of these properties. Now, we're not saying this is going to be the use. Look at page 62. This is what we're going to make it build. It's an idea, and that's what we use it as.
Okay.
But
And we also have
I'm in
large-
agreement. I don't think at this point we want to throw any specific thing out.
Yeah, that was a basic point. I don't know that we can get any resorts type development there. So I think we do have to make sure that both at the north end and at the south end, we have to keep our options open. And I see people very patiently waiting, and I should probably shut up at this point.
Michael, any questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple comments on comments here that I'd like to make. In speaking of the Willow Point and the affordable housing, I'm looking at the title of this. It's the Lakeport Lakefront Revitalization Plan, and I don't think that putting affordable housing here is the highest use of this property. I really like this document and everything that went into it, and all the people that contributed to this, and everybody in the city, and everybody that's here tonight that cares. I really like to see when I drive down Lakeshore, when I drive down Main Street, I like to be able to get my peekaboo looks at the lake, and the school property is certainly one of them. I would love to see that continue to be open. I don't think that we have enough open spaces next to the lake. I really like the promenade, the possibility that this could be a bike path, a walking path, a jogging path, and that it keeps, it just flows nicely in the downtown area, and hopefully will tie in the lake with the downtown businesses. I love some of the suggestions here. Obviously, for many years, people have been talking about the shops staying open after 5. The shop owners will tell you that it's not profitable to stay open after 5, and there probably is a compromise, either whether it's during high season, whatever that we can do to have nights where we can keep these shops open and help the people spend more money in the downtown. I like that this document is flexible and that there's nothing here that's set in concrete, and that it can flow and it can begin. And I think that my regret is that we can't start building on it tomorrow, but I'm glad to hear that we're moving forward and with parts of it and laying out a vision for the future, so that this doesn't turn into something that we don't know what it's going to be. We have at least an idea of what it's going to be, and we can propose it to the public, and we can try to get funding. And those were my thoughts tonight. Thank you.
As me being a resident since 1962, Lakeport, I've seen a lot of changes, and this document is probably the best change I've ever seen in the city of Lakeport. And I think with a lot of work and a lot of cooperation from the property owners and our citizens, I think this is a doable project. And I'm excited about it. It would revitalize the businesses, our tourist trade. We've had none for years and years. And I really think that this is the direction we need to go. That's all. And I think I'm going to open up the public hearing. I want to remind you that you are being recorded. I would like you to there's a lot of us here tonight. It's great to see a big audience. I would like to keep it to 3 to 5 minutes for your comments and questions. And at this time, I'm going to open up the public hearing. Come up to the podium, please. State your name for the record.
Good evening, Commissioners. Wilda Schock, Chair of the Volunteer Lakeport Economic Development Advisory Committee. And on behalf of the committee, and thanks to the members who are here tonight, we've been working over the past year and a half on an economic development strategic plan for the city of Lakeport, which the City Council accepted and adopted last month. So I want to just mention very briefly and reiterate and emphasize the aspects of this plan that ties in with the Economic Development Strategic Plan. And first of all, I want to just give you the definition of, or the marching orders for LEDAC is an advocate for a strong and positive Lakeport business community and a conduit between the city and the community for communicating the goals, activities, and progress of Lakeport's economic and business programs. So with that in mind, we did identify, following the City Council's prioritization of economic development in this year and in their scope of work and addressing it in the budget, we identified 3 goals, and what I want to just call out to you are some of the implementation aspects of those goals that tie into this lakefront revitalization plan. The first one was to reinvigorate economic development activities on a regional basis, and part of that it was involved with attracting a lodging and conference facility, and to encourage the vibrant lakefront area promenade event space. So this, again, reiterating and emphasizing what's part of that. Goal number 2 was the business retention and attraction efforts. Reopen Carnegie Library to public use, attraction of wine-related and ancillary businesses, tasting rooms, cooperation between public and private sectors. These are all things that would apply in the lakefront area and tying in again with the plan. The third goal was to enhance the downtown and lakefront area, and doing that through the hotel feasibility study, the such things as sidewalk and outdoor dining. We talked about the potential for change in the zoning ordinance that might be necessary to make that happen. Lake recreation vending on a temporary basis, as was addressed in the plan. There's all types of things that could happen even on a seasonal basis that again would draw people from downtown to the lakefront and to businesses. Again, reopening Carnegie Library, the promenade, the lodging, conference and dining, such things as reestablishing a destination marketing organization or a lodging association that would help in this marketing of Lakeport and the downtown, and increasing the tourist activities. I think you'll find that the citizens are vitally interested in what happens, particularly in their downtown area and the lakefront area. So it'll be interesting to see how we can all work together to pull some of this and identify funding sources. And there are some that could be available and some matching funds. So we need to think creatively and go from there. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Olive. Come up to the podium and state your name, please.
Good evening. My name is Carol Cole-Lewis, and I represent the Clear Lake Scullers. We're a 15-year-old rowing club at Natural High School, and we're very active. So I'd like to make some comments, at least a comment that I was a little bit curious about. As I was listening to your presentation and as I read the document, from what I gather, what you're saying is that this is a rather flexible plan that has some ideas that you can use to move forward with in order to get developed. So what I'm hearing is that there is not a project identified yet. I mean, in other words, with an overall project manager, and first we're going to do the hotel, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that. Am I correct in that?
Correct.
Correct. Okay, great. So my question actually is this. As a citizen that's concerned with a particular interest area, me being the rowing club, I know there are many other people like me that have particular interest areas. How can we continue to stay involved and make sure that our, not only our needs taken account of, but also how can we help support this? How can we help get funding? What can we do?
I think those are all excellent questions. I mean, I'm more than happy, my staff's more than happy we can speak to your groups. If you guys have identified funding sources, we're more than willing to take a listen to those. I mean, I think that's kind of what we really designed in some of these spaces. We are very aware of some of the existing uses that use these areas formally and informally. And the idea is, we believe, having gone through the study, that there's plenty of room for a lot of those to exist and coexist together I think there are plenty of avenues to expand the use of these areas for the seaplane flights. I think the Scullers are a perfect use of that area. That came across. We have pretty good access for motorized boats, but we don't have the greatest access necessarily right now for some of the non-motorized boats. So those are all pieces to element it. So stay in contact with us if you become aware of things.
And is it just staying in contact, or are you going to have an active social media page where we can pay attention to this and
We certainly-
actively promote what's going on a day-by-day basis on Facebook?
We have a website.
We certainly can. I think if you go to specifically the multi-use zone area, one of the first recommendations, and I think actually it kind of overlaps into the public launch and parking area, is putting together sort of a group that's continually analyzing this. So I think that's one of the first steps, is to keep these things moving together, and then making sure that the applicable groups are represented on such a group.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Come up and state your name, please.
My name is Tyra St. John. I'm a member of the Lakeport City
LEDAC.
LEDAC is what I'm trying to think of, the Lakeport Day. I want to just make two quick comments. One is that I think it is a fabulous plan. It's very exciting. I know a lot of people have worked on it. I have not been able to work on it, but I have been kind of working, hiding, and working on another plan called Lake County Resilience, which has a lot to do with building the consciousness of Lake County and with Lakeport particularly in attention, because so many of the events would be here. That's just one part of it. But I also am very convinced that it is not only a hotel that we need here, it is a convention center. And it really wasn't, I don't know whether it's mentioned in the book, I haven't seen the book. But I think that's very important that we emphasize that, because we do need large convention facilities to draw film here, to draw visitors here, and to draw organizations from here, all around the United States. The American Dental Association and American this and American that. A lot of people would like to come here, but we do not have the infrastructure for that. And so all of the entrepreneurial things and the hotels and the lodging could take that into consideration, to have meeting places that are large enough for large groups to come here. And the one other thing I do want to say is I didn't see parking very liberally on the plan. There's probably a lot more parking that is in the plan that I haven't seen, but it seems to be a huge issue that could probably accommodate, 3-story and 4-story buildings here, and I'm wondering how that's going to be addressed. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, the convention center first and foremost shows up quite a bit, and that came up in a lot of our stakeholder meetings. Kind of that need to kind of show off and be able to have facilities where people can come those up. The Wine Growers Association and the tasting rooms have all said they've kind of mastered that ability of getting folks up here for the day, but they need the other facilities to get groups up here, to go beyond just a day use. In regards to parking, a number of the alternatives included not only addressing parking, but just improved circulation in general. So yes, those are all pieces that are critical to this plan.
And one final thing on drawing people and drawing businesses and drawing capital to Lake County and to Lakeport particularly, I think we could consider Lakeport as kind of a partner to Canocti in helping market that property throughout the United States in whatever way any individual or group can do, to bring high tech in here and to bring the film industry in, which also needs its own infrastructure of small businesses that would support those. So those are just ideas that I hope everybody's poking around with.
Yeah, I would say that there'd be a lot of, I mean, this is not only an important area to Lakeport, this is an important regional area to the entire Lake County community.
Right.
And so I think, yes, there is a lot of indirect relationships and direct relationships for any economic success. I think, positive things that happen in this area are going to have a positive effect on other areas and vice versa.
I would like to see Marymount become an international film school. Some things to put our imagination. Thank you, Kevin, very much for all your work and all your teams. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. State your name, please.
Hi there, my name is Erin McCarrick. I am, I'm not a Lake County or Lakeport resident, but I want to be, and I want to move here because and my comment is in support of the Scullers. That's part of the reason that I want to move here. I came here under unfortunate circumstances to help clean up the Valley Fire, and then unfortunately next year the Clayton Fire. So this is so beautiful. Thank you for whoever, for the community, for you guys, for doing this, because I fell in love with this county, and it's so awesome to see this underway and happening, and still get a little emotional about it. But it's awesome to see this happen in the county, and I hope that it does, and I hope that the Scullers get to keep their place, because that's a really unique thing that they've worked really hard to build. I rode with them once. We didn't have too much spare time cleaning up, but I enjoyed it. So thank you guys for the work, and can't wait to move here.
Can you give the spelling, please, on your last
Sure,
name?
MCCARRICK.
Thank you.
Thanks.
State your name for the record, please.
My name is Joe Gossett, and I want to thank you because I filled out the forms they had them over at one of the Friday night things, and I really like the fact that you seem to be honoring it. I really like the idea of keeping the school as open space. I love driving down the street and being able to see the lake while I'm going through town. I don't want to lose the parts we love. I know you want hotels. Maybe you could do a high rise away from the lake so everybody can have their lake view. One thing I notice is there is nowhere for people to stay when they come. When we have the bass guys come with RVs and they wind up staying out at Canocti, there's nowhere for them to park in here. If we get an RV place, it needs to be for tourists because we have a problem. They don't have a place to stay. The other thing is access to Lake County. I know this is a big thought and no one wants to think about it, but the shortest way to Santa Rosa, we all know, is Hopland, and there's been at least 4 places that have slid out, and they don't seem to care. Caltrans doesn't seem to care about fixing it. 20 years ago, I talked to them about it when my husband was commuting, and they said they needed a request from the county to explore that and put significant interest in it. It would cut off miles of time and time, and we would get much. If we want people to come, we have to have it accessible. Otherwise, we have to bring people by bus. I have relatives, they go up through Ukiah. No one wants to drive our horrible roads. And we all know this. And I'm not expecting you to have the answer overnight. But I want to thank you for thinking about it. The promenade is beautiful. Our lake is a wonderful asset. I personally don't care for boating, but I enjoy looking at the lake and the birds. And I think millions of people do. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. State your name for the record, please.
My name's Meg Harper, And I'm just really excited about the plan. I've just come back from Oregon, going all through Oregon, and they have beautiful downtowns in many of their places. And I'm going to be retiring soon, and I'd rather stay here, but so I'm glad to see we're doing something. I was curious if there's a visual theme. Are we doing anything that is kind of keeping a continuity visually in the plan?
I don't know that there's anything specifically within the plan, but I mean, those were some of the things we've taken a look at as we move forward, say with like a promenade master plan or something, that it, of definitely having some sort of uniform, visual element to kind of tie it all together. So I don't think there's anything directly in the plan, but I think it's, one of the key elements was improving connectivity between, even though the lakefront and Main Street are only a block away, it seems like there's a disconnect somehow.
Yeah.
And so nothing directly, but I would imagine that anything that went towards improving that connectivity would be something visually uniform, some sort of consistent signage.
One of the things that we have here in Lake County is the 1800s, and we don't play that out enough. I know Sisters, Oregon really does that by just simply the way they put their faces on every building kind of looks like the 1800s, and it really has a definite charm. Would be neat to see us do some kind of visual theme or play up our 1800s, our history. And then the last thing I wanted to say is I agree we need affordable housing, but not on the lakefront. It's precious if we put houses out there. If we put houses out there, then it's the houses out there. And so anyway, thank you very much for everything you do.
Thank you.
I'd like to speak on that, just comment on that, just so that I don't sound anti-affordable housing, and maybe people in the room don't either. I think that many of us are in agreement that this isn't the best place to put it. This may not be the highest use of land in our city. This may not be the best place, but if we open this project up and revitalize our downtown and our lakefront, that this will be for everybody. This won't be for a group.
Well, I get to follow up that comment with a comment too. It's not this broader debate, but here's the deal. We already had affordable housing on Willow Point. It got flooded out. And when you're talking about boosting the fortunes of resort communities, again, South Lake Tahoe is a great example because, yeah, there's a lot of money flying through there on the highway, but the workers in South Lake Tahoe cannot find housing. They live in squalid conditions in rundown hotels. So if we're going to imagine a vision for the waterfront and say it's only for the tourists and the dogs and the people who like that one block, I am interested not only in lakefront development, but the broader economic development of a city. And to have one little peak of the lake on one block of Main Street is great. But when you keep driving block and block and block of South Main Street and see decay and no housing available, that speaks to me. So my comment is anything involving residential housing in Lakeport has to be on the table. And if there's a project that comes through, because again, the city doesn't have money, but if there's grant funding available that we can kill two birds with one stone and we can create some type of residential development that would have a affordable housing component to it, that raises all fortunes. So I just want to be clear that the lakefront is important not just to preserve the local recreation, but it's also important to develop the economy of Lakeport because that's important.
You may come up now.
I don't need to go to the speaker. I've been here for about 30 years. I agree with this gentleman and this gentleman and this gentleman, and I respectfully disagree with this gentleman. I've owned this piece of property for 25 years. I had a fruit stand here, closed it 20 years ago. There was a potential development here 30 years ago that was going to be a hotel resort. And as this gentleman said, this is a very prime piece of property for Lakeport. It's key to the development of all the real estate around here. And there's plenty of squalling buildings in Lake County for low income to live in now. We need to bring money here, and we need a really nice seawall here with lots of places for boats and a big hotel, and the rest will develop right behind it.
Before you finish, sir, would you come up and state your name for the record, please?
Some people know you. I don't know anybody here. My name's Peter Ependendio, and I have the fruit stand on the corner, C, Main and C. And I gave it 10 years. I tried really hard, and I like the new board. And I'm from here this direction. I'm proud of you. I'm a little disenchanted and people talk about how terrible this lake is. There's nothing wrong with this lake, and yet it stinks right now. And we gotta get it up and go. Here was my plan. I talked to Farrington, and I said, talk to the county, have them build the marina, have a developer, and the guy that owns this piece of property right behind me, this guy right here, he bought it in a whim for nothing.
Yeah.
And he wanted to buy this piece. I don't know who just bought it. Somebody bought it, huh?
Yeah.
And now they're kind of cleaning up and they're gonna try to make it what's called. Well, he wanted to buy this, and he would love to have built a hotel. I was here a year or so ago, and I said I was disenchanted with the city of Lakeport. Was any of you here when I did that? It's completely clean slate here. Is that what it is? Well, anyway, so I really, and as far as build it, they will come. And the county, which this is the seat's right. Where is the county? Right here. Yeah. Here's the seat. That's the old anyway. So I'm sitting on this corner waiting for something. I left for 20 years. I've been gone for 20 years. And let's get something going.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
After that, are you kidding me?
Here's your opportunity. Well, with no more then, great to see a good audience here tonight. The input is very important to all of us up here on the staff. It helps us a lot. We don't get a lot of input from our community for our meetings, and we could sure use it, and tonight's one of those nights. I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. Okay, how about we pretty much talked quite a bit about this, but what do we think?
I feverishly tried to write down all of your previous comments and stuff too, so if there's any ones that you want to hit and highlight, the next step, assuming that your commission moves forward with a recommendation to council, is presenting this document, of course, but also bringing your guys' comments forward and the comments that we've heard from the public today as well. So if there's any that you want to emphasize more than another, I think now's a good opportunity, and we'll make sure we make that message to the council as well.
Did have some points of clarification. On page 55 and the other recommendations to amend the zoning ordinance, we take out the resort residential. Can you clarify again the R5 zoning? It's a combined district of resort uses and multifamily housing?
High density residential.
Okay, so it would not, if you were to bring it back as worded, you'd be bringing it back basically to take out the possibility of the multifamily.
No, I don't think so. I think it would be more, right now, you can do this or this. And there's not a lot of opportunities for mixing. It's not a good mixed-use development ordinance. There's nothing to stop someone from coming in today and doing one or the other. And I just don't think it's a really conducive tool to achieving the community's vision.
and one of the things we have been discussing is like kind of a hierarchy of the R5. I mean, most of our R5s are gone now. I mean, they've been developed, and there's probably not much that's going to happen with them. They're single-family dwellings or mobile home parks in the south end of town. Where we're looking at is maybe a hierarchy where some of these areas in the downtown area represent such a significant importance to not only the downtown, but the community in general, you know, that maybe residential isn't the best use for these properties.
I guess that's the clarity. Were you intending by bringing forward that proposed amendment to exclude any form of residential or just high density?
We haven't written it yet. We don't know. We'll work towards that as we develop.
Yeah, I think right now that the major concern was, and we had instances in the past where we had a pre-application meeting where somebody wanted to bring in and build a mobile home park and completely build out one of these sites. And our current ordinance allows that without any tools to kind of maintain, you know, the community's importance on those pieces. So it just, right now we don't have very good tools at our disposal for keeping the community's vision for these waterfront areas. So that's not to say that you throw everything out completely, but we just want to make sure that we have the tools to come back and take a look at this and make sure that what gets proposed at that site, bodies like your own and the city council have a clear understanding of what the community's vision for it is, and so you can compare what the proposals are. You know, when we get a specific development proposal in front of you, that you can, you know, kind of compare it to that. Right now, that's difficult, just the way that ordinance is written. If somebody comes in with a mobile home park for one of those sites, especially the commission's hands is really tied because the zoning ordinance says it's okay. So you can only maneuver so far in those directions. So I think it's just important to...
So I have a question to that then, if I may. At what point does specific planning reverse that hand time and make it a very possible, here's a very specific open source, let's say for instance it's natural high. We've heard it tonight that a lot of folks really want it to be open space, this to say. So in a specific plan, we identify it as open space and therefore it's locked in as open space, period. Same thing with Willow Point, if it was R5.
Is that something that we found, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's
Is that something that we found from the input from the community? Was that something that was stated earlier, that the community feels very strongly about that parcel?
Yes,
yeah,
very strongly.
But I was using it as an example for, again, specific planning. So again, Willow Point, basic history was it started off as a resort.
Yes.
It was converted into housing, and now it's sort of in flux. If it was in a specific plan to be specifically designed for resort, period, or housing, period, would that then not untie the hands of the commission? Because now you're talking about a very limited scope of what you can do with that property.
This is not a specific plan.
I understand. I'm referring to the question of...
Well, I think if you look at it kind of in the key components that, you know, the planning follows, you have your general plan, your kind of a higher arching, long-term looking document. And this is really a complement to that.
Right.
But then you have your zoning ordinance that is kind of your day-to-day implementation, your working document of that implementation. So, for instance, I've heard almost everyone on the commission tonight and a lot of folks in the audience talk about how they like this because of the flexibility it creates. So I can say that our zoning ordinance doesn't have that flexibility currently. And so really that's, I think, the next step is not, there's no real hard and fast recommendations right now, but I think overwhelmingly what we're taking from this plan is we need to look at our zoning ordinance, specifically the R5 zoning district, but some of our other elements as well. You know, right now we don't permit any sort of vending. You know, maybe we need to look at that. I don't know what that quite looks like, but really it's kind of taking, you know, kind of making sure that our zoning ordinance has the flexibility necessary to implement this community vision.
Right. So in regards to that dialogue with this specific idea, and as the chair said, this is one of the more comprehensive outreaches and participations that we've had about any one of our ideas or potential developments. And what I'm seeing here is that a lot of folks are interested, they want to stay interested, and how many times have you heard, yeah, it's a great idea, but you're never going to get it done. So I keep pushing for this ideal of set in stone as much as possible. Yeah, this is a flexible document. It's really important that it stays flexible, but there are certainly some tools that we need to look at, I believe, within the ordinances to clean them up, to tighten them down, to make sure that this can happen instead of being sidelined by somebody coming and saying, I want to put in a mobile home park because I can. If we don't want to put in a mobile home park, we should identify that right now and say, this land is not for mobile homes. This land is for park.
Well, although
if a project came in on one of these properties, we would look at that project, we would look at our zoning ordinance, and we would look at this.
Right, but
and
then like you
say,
said, our hands are tied.
well, no,
because
we're
we
not,
don't know
our hands are
anything
not
about it.
tied. We're gonna make a recommendation that, is this consistent with all of these plans?
once this document's in.
Once that, right.
But to put it into perspective, even though we're talking about it being flexible, I mean, this is still concrete in that there is an overarching vision that's created here. And a lot of the problems we get at the counter when we have developers who come in is that's one of the first things they'll ask sometimes is, what does the community want? And if we don't have an answer to that question, developers don't mind being creative, but they want to be creative within a context. They want to know kind of roughly what is they don't want to spend a whole lot of monies on a plan and then get to the commission or get to the council and have it shot down because all of a sudden a room full of community members come out with their pitchforks. They want to have a document like this that kind of already outlines that so that they know what it is. So regardless of the recommended fixes, this is a giant leap forward.
I agree.
On that aspect, because I mean, once this is adopted, we can direct folks directly to this, and they can cater their development project to meet these visions. So it's flexible and there's lots of steps, but that was one of the key things we designed is, yeah, we're not going to be able to just blanketly develop everything in this plan all at once, but there are things that do happen instantaneously once this does get adopted.
Good.
If I could circle back before the pitchforks came out to the idea on the special commercial development zone to kind of fluff it up a little bit to include those the B of A property and the other property based on Main Street. I think just for planning purposes, that would be good.
I have that recommendation written down. Does any other comments from commissioner members on?
Well, and then we'd also, if you're gonna do that, you may wanna take the small building behind the bank and just call it a zone.
Yeah, just basically.
I think there's a boat repair place.
I would just square it up. And actually, it's kind of confusing because there's a little parcel on the southwest of the natural high property. So you would either put that in the commercial property or you would kind of expand the natural high segment.
So you're thinking about
But somehow
planning
I
like
want
that.
those buildings to be included in the plan area.
Yeah, and that, I think that's pretty consistent.
That'd work out.
That's kind of consistent with the direction we were looking. I mean, when you walk down Main Street, you kind of, if you start at First, you walk down those 2 blocks, First, Second, and Third, you have a really good feeling of where you're at. You are in the downtown area on both sides. You go 1 block up, where you're on the fire department side, you still have that Main Street feel, but you lose it right there with that block. It's not to say that those aren't important uses. I mean, I think they are very critical, community businesses, but you have to ask yourself, is that really downtown? And, this isn't going to force anything down their throats. We're not going to go out there and start closing, community businesses. But we want to just start having a dialogue with them and let them, what are their future plans, and kind of trying to tie all those pieces together. It was one of the more popular hotel location sites because it's right there in downtown with everything. But to be honest, it would be one of the hardest ones to pull off because of the existing businesses that are there, and the existing parcel configuration doesn't lend itself perfectly as well. But its location is ideal to really kind of tie directly into Main Street tie directly into the lakefront. So regardless of if it's a hotel or anything, that block does have a lot of advantages to connectivity that may not be the highest and best uses occurring right now.
This may not be the best map, but I did see a couple of references to city-owned property on the south side of Dutch Harbor, I guess, or Dutch Harbor
There is
itself.
one little-
And then there's one in the middle of the district there.
If there's a tiny sliver piece between the Natural High property and the Dutch Harbor property that is actually owned by the city.
Is it?
It's on the Main Street side, that little, you can see the two white lines right there. You're right on it. I think there's the little hair salon shop, the little cinder block building that sits right there, I think is.
And then was there another city-owned parcel on the south side of the resort district? Because I think that was one of the hotel locations discussed.
Right here.
That's the Dutch Harbor property, correct, yes.
That is.
And I think with what you're describing is if that piece was included, it's almost like you flip that same image in that hotel, if that became a doable site as well. And then you'd have front, I mean, so I think, and the other element that I wanted to point out earlier, someone mentioned about the character, is there's a recommendation should push for establishing a more traditional historic Main Street look for the block. So that would just reinforce the Main Street
Correct.
Historic look to it.
And, can you go over that open space designation, what are allowed uses in open space?
Not much. You know,
Recreational uses.
Library Park is an open space use.
Yeah.
West Side Park is an open space use.
So when we talk about pop-up businesses, like are discussed in the plan, would that be allowed in open
Not
space?
currently, but the plan does
Yeah.
make recommendations on looking at how we go about amending those sort of things.
With containers.
Well, allow such uses, well, there are attractive uses
No,
of those containers.
I didn't, we were joking about that the other day. I do find them attractive, and I think that was a great use. It was an interesting picture rendering. It was adding some humor, Dan, sorry about that.
No. We've had long discussions of these.
Okay, and it's been a long meeting, and I know we have another project, but the desire is to keep natural high, and yet I just got to call it like it is. It's grossly underutilized in its current incarnation. And I know part of the goal is like, let's fluff it up, but it's not a fully realized concept as a park even. Maybe there's a community center, maybe there's not, maybe there's a water feature, maybe there's not. So I know which way the wind is blowing, let's go open space and all that, but I found some of the details lacking in this plan as far as the best and highest use of that as a park. And even if that is really the will of the community, now we've got a big open space park that's basically bisecting our resort up top and the rest of our commercial district down south, with only the little promenade connecting it. And going back to the historic, or even what the kids may need and stuff like that. Then I look at Willow Point and I go, this is beautiful property. I haven't been able to tour it on site, but it looks like a very special environmental site. And I'm thinking RV parks are not the best use there. Maybe even mixed retail resort isn't the best use there. So I want the flexibility, but again, we didn't really fluff out anything other than resort / RV park for that. I mean, I can see, that seems to me a more desirable extension of Library Park to the south, more ability to do interpretive trails, maybe the ability to open up some things like parcel swaps for some of the other underutilized parcels. And I'm trying to get to a point here, but it's just like, I feel like all of these little elements are fine. I want to swap the dog park with the adventure park, whatever. We can argue about that stuff all day long. But these are the biggest pieces of the puzzle. And I'm just not sure that where we're at on Willow Point gives enough direction to staff or to would-be applicants moving forward. And same thing on the north side.
Well, like on the north side is the city property. And say, historically, the hotels have been developed up in that area. You say it's bisecting. And that's primarily because those hotels were basically walled-in communities. Whereas if you develop the city property with a hotel, adjacent to that, you could have a certain interface with that open space and the hotel. A new hotel, if that was the location for a hotel.
And I think that's a silver lining in it, because you kind of hit on that earlier. It's like drilling down to what the community really cares about. you know, the views to the lake, the use of some of that site. That may not mean that whole property, but I think at the same time, we've got to respect the community's desire, and I think we need to demonstrate to them first that you're protecting those elements before you start looking at other options. Because I think there may be some possibilities there with maybe a small lot line adjustment between the city-owned property and the natural high. But because let's be honest, I mean, that building that's there is not, the building that's on the natural high property is not contributing to, you know, the community's visual aesthetic. So I mean, even if you just drew an imaginary line across there and you gave a developer that little extra space, and maybe as part of the incentive program got them to help do some other open space things, I think this document provides that sort of horse trading, mix and match sort of process to take place.
Okay, let me just quickly show 3 quick slides. It's ironic they're all here. So just the reason why the open space hasn't been defined, because we got into this process says you can't define it until something starts it to be defined. So in the case of this one, for instance, this is a large community center with a active area for uses. Here would be a big a big bandstand. So that was the focus of this one. The next one illustrates what we were talking about, a hotel with see right now the signal line is right here. There'd have to be some lot line adjustment to create would be the amenities for the hotel. But then it'd create that promenade, be able to connect at least to there and have that interacting harbor. And then really reinforcing the connection here as well as a connection along the main street. And then the third one was, what if the city went ahead and actually put retail and actually push the element of the working with the school district to maybe whether that's a hotel or a community center or what you want to call it. Maybe it's this conference center to be discussed, but there's some recognition that retail is still a usable, allowable use in that area. So you could actually start to extend the retail along Main Street with that, still keeping that open space visible, which people want to see, as well as connected to the spot. So that's where we kind of, the aha was, we can't solve this until something came to the forefront that started it going, and we can't lock it into a decision. So I think that hopefully those 3 slides let you know that we did think different alternatives, just didn't just default to open space.
And we almost shied away from these. If you look, turn to page 30, 35, 39, and 41. Those are the 3 alternatives. Actually, there's another one too, 3. And it showed a wide variety of alternatives for these properties. Each one had a different set of alternatives. And, you know, they're in here, and we might turn to them and use them, but we need to wait for a project to come down the line and some kind of guidance.
You need the project to give the guidance. For example, I don't know if there's a consensus, but I could say, for example, the one on 39 would be my preference. Are you asking for preferences to be recommended to the city?
No, these were just
alternatives to stay
these were
as
before you were on the
alternatives.
planning commission.
Okay.
There were public meetings, and these were the 4 alternatives that kind of went before the public.
And that was a critical piece. I mean, we sat down with Steve and went, do we want to pick one of these as a preferred alternative? And we went back and forth quite a bit. And in the end, we decided no. But at the same time, we decided we want them to all be in the plan to kind of demonstrate, you know, okay, well, if something went here, that doesn't necessarily preclude it from being here just because it wasn't on that plan.
Yeah.
I thought we were adopting a preferred alternative.
Well, you're adopting the recommendations that break out each section, and each of these alternatives are represented in there.
Okay, so we're basically recommending the basic framework. We're not, even though there's a preferred alternative identified in the document, you're saying that we're not signing off on that.
If you turn to page 61, that has the multi-use event space area, and that defines
It's not saying that when we
the 3.
pass along that it's gonna be that. It could be any change as we go along, as we get a project for that.
And here's the 3 alternatives that the consultant developed. And, you know, he's not gonna go out there and build them next week. You know, these are the 3 alternatives that the conceptual plans for this property. And if somebody comes in the future, well, let's put this hotel at the north end of the city property. Well, this is how it relates to that, here's how it could relate to that park. Here's how the design, when it comes in from an actual applicant, it's like, well, you know, you're gonna propose a hotel on this property, well, how's it gonna fit in to the overall use of the school district property? How is it gonna feed, you know, how is it gonna create that connectivity? How is the, you know, then the question of the conference center comes up. Where does the conference center relate to that as well as the public use?
And that's why you see, when you look directly at page 61, all three of those alternatives are in the preferred alternative.
Well, if you look at the alternative 3, there was a community center, and I believe when we were talking about the construction of a community center was what, 4.5 million? Well, we might not have 4.5 million handy real soon. You know, so, but it's an idea. If something comes down the road, we
Well, and
go
also,
that.
if I may, this document, if you look at the appendix, this document was crafted through workshops and stakeholder meetings, and so all of that information was taken into account before the consultant actually compiled all these things. So these 3 concepts were the culmination of all of those meetings and all of that dialogue, and it's not set in stone for sure, any of it. But this is what their 3 top sort of options that were discussed, of the many that were discussed at that time. There were 5 or 6 for each one of these properties, and these were the top 3. Yes, maybe convention center, yes, maybe hotel, yes, maybe water park. And so that's the concept behind what this document is for. So.
Okay, so the only hard recommendation I had left was and you already said you're going to note that in the findings that go to the city council.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Or we may modify it before the city council
Yeah.
to reflect it. Because I just went through the recommendations. It looks like that property would fit in perfectly to all the recommendations and the implementation process.
Right.
And then I don't know where you would fit it, and I don't know if there's consensus to do it. But since all of this is advisory only, I am not personally opposed to acknowledging that whether it was intended in the zoning or not, there may be some long-term residency situations already happening in our resort zone or were happening in the Willow Point area. So I'm not opposed, as we continue to evaluate business models that might work there, taking a look at things besides big box resorts and hotels that we want, but may not have a viable business model. Whereas some residential projects may actually have longer, more sustainable contributing factors to the local economy, because residents who live here year-round, we're not worried about just bumping them for an overnight stay and getting some TOT. We're caring for our residents there. And is there a way to put that general suggestion in there?
Does the rest of the commission share that?
No.
Okay.
No, I think that everybody has spoke, and you're going against the will of what everybody wants here. That's my personal feeling. I like you. You're a smart guy. It's not personal. This was a resort area. It was, as far as I know, it was a resort area that had been converted into sort of permanent housing that was completely substandard. And I feel bad that these people have been displaced during the flood. This area right now, as it currently sits, floods. It's flooded a number of times. I think that we can do better for them. I think that this planning commission has already approved a plan out on Martin Street. I think that we can look at other alternatives for low-income housing, and that we don't have to put it back here in the downtown revitalization. That's my personal opinion.
I'm concerned that an RV resort is exactly going to repeat that history, and I think they're probably going back again to the highest use of the land. It's ecological preserve, learning resource center, interpretive trails, any number of that, which obviously has no money-making potential at all. But and I'll bow to the consensus. If you don't want to talk about affordable housing there, that's fine. But we're
I
looking
don't
at an
think it's
RV park.
necessarily about that. I think, from my perspective, it's about the overall impression and perspective of what this community is supposed to look like to everybody else. When you go to Calistoga, it looks like Calistoga. It feels like the wine country. There's a reason for that. They spent a lot of time developing their look and their image. You don't see low-income housing on Main Street of 29 of Calistoga. It's there, but it's on the peripheral. Same thing goes for anywhere in Tahoe except for maybe Tahoe Vista. When you're on the lake of Tahoe, it's Tahoe. There's lots of housing, there's all kinds of housing, but it's not right on the water because the TARP won't allow it. So they're really conscious about the image. Lakeport is trying to create an image. We're a small town, we're losing people. We need money, we need an infusion. This document is to help that along, and I think that the overall perception of this town needs an identity. And I think one of the speakers, one of the citizens, said it best. We need a visual theme, and visual themes are consistent. Disneyland's Disneyland. What is Lakeport? Right now, Lakeport's kind of all over the place. This is an opportunity, I think, to take one section, a very important section of Lakeport, and say, here's how we connect with the greatest natural body of water in California to our community. And here's the gateway, here's the image. And let's go from this block to this block and make this something important for people to pay attention to. Housing and all the rest of it, that can be on the peripheral. But in this section, this specific section, let's design this. So I think that's what it's more about than everything else.
And just south of that is the Esplanade and that new apartment complex south of there. So
Yeah.
there is housing right on the lakefront. And
Yes.
if you want to
But this is the
people
park,
to develop the
but this is
property.
the park, and this is the center of town, and this is where everything happens. When we shut down the streets because Main Street Association wants to have Oktoberfest, it's right here. If we have cars and boats, it's right here. It's not an Esplanade, it's not up on the avenue, it's right here. So all of our money has been going from Park Street to 4th Street, mostly. The 3 blocks are right here, for the 3 streets we just, or 3 blocks we just did. So yeah, I mean, it's all important, it really is all important, but if you're gonna have one section that says, come visit, spend your money every summer, you have to have one location that's consistent. You can't have it just all over the place. I think that's what this does.
My vision in moving the R5 district forward is not to eliminate housing completely, but to make resort the primary use there. And then that would allow housing to be considered as a piece of other functions. Like you said, unfortunately, we don't have a year-round tourism business. So I mean, in my workings with resort folks, is they're looking at ways of padding those shoulder seasons. But right now you have this and that situation where this is allowed and this is allowed in that. It's a very interesting zoning district. So I think as we move forward, we can certainly look at how housing might work and fit in. But I think overall what we're looking for is any use, whether it be housing, whether it be commercial, needs to complement that resort.
Right. But hasn't the housing element already addressed that, honestly? I mean, with all the infill and available.
Well, it just counts the housing numbers and, the affordability.
We do
Right.
currently use some of our R5 zoning.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing that says, if somebody came in tomorrow and said, I want to develop Willow Point into condominiums, there's nothing that says we would require affordable housing. We don't have an affordable housing ordinance.
Right.
So they could just say, we're going to make very wealthy homes on Willow Point, and we're not going to provide any affordable housing.
Or cut off public access for that matter. And that is a concern, because the ordinance, if somebody wants to come in with that tomorrow, that is an option to them. It, of course, still needs to go through review, but our tools to implement the community's vision are really tight right now.
Now, if somebody came in, possibly say, hey, I want to build condominiums and timeshares together on Willow Point or something of that nature, that does provide some kind of a little bit of a, tourism industry kind of
Maybe it's just my perception, but in attending some of these workshops and reading this over and over again, it's, to me, this speaks of what the community is looking for. And if that particular aspect is possible, I think that's counter to what the overall objective is of this plan. So in that case, then I would recommend, if there was such a thing to recommend, is to figure out how the city can become partners or figure out some way of solidifying the direction of the public instead of saying, we have an open-ended piece of property, Willow Point or Natural High or whatever it might be. We really want this to be developed in a certain way within the next 15 years. How do we get there? And if that means we ought to start working on changing ordinances, we better get on that.
Well, right now, I mean, it kind of, and this is just a suggested, it's just a recommendation. Any physical zoning ordinance is going to go through its own process. For right now, it just sets forth sort of a guiding statement of how staff should go about looking at the changes. So, I mean, right now it says, I'm looking at the one specifically in Willow Point. It reads verbatim, identify Willow Point C Street Enhancement Zone as an important lakefront visitor serving area and consider amending the R5, Resort High Density Residential Zoning District, to eliminate residential uses as a standalone use and prioritize resort commercial uses, including the prioritization of overnight accommodations, hotels, RV park, campground, timeshares, etc., and resort commercial uses. It doesn't say eliminate, it just says prioritize that these have been identified as key resort areas. We don't have very many of them. Housing, we have a few more tools on where we can locate that. We looked at the Martin Street project that we just did. It's not to say that you eliminate it completely, but right now they're on the same footing, and yet the community's saying this has a special place and we need to treat these areas with care. So I think that's all it's saying, is just providing that direction. We'll get to find out the specifics of it when we do the physical zone changes. But that's just sort of the recommendation.
I looked at Willow Point 25 years ago when I moved here, and I thought it was a complete gold mine, and was told repeatedly over those years that the reason it did not develop was because of the low-income housing, that all the trailers that were in there. Now they're not there. Now the property is sold, and I do not think that the area to have low-income housing is at Willow Point or anywhere on the lakefront for that matter. We have too many areas in the infill area in Lakeport, and we are developing Martin Street project for low-income housing, specifically for a lot of the fire victims, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I just corrected it. It is there, and it is permitted. I mean, it's still.
I know it's there, but it's not functional, and it's condemned, and that is the reason that it wasn't developed. And now it's sold. It's, did you just say it was sold? Didn't I say it was sold?
Yeah, no, the information you gave was, it was being advertised, but that was an old advertisement. It's the same.
Yeah, it was 20
It's the same
years.
owner who.
25 years old price is what it was sold for. I mean, it was sold for $2 million. I was floored when I got the advertisement that said it was sold. Anyway, so it is not sold?
Well, I mean, it's privately owned. It's a privately owned parcel.
I know that.
The same owner has owned it for almost 2 years now, or a year and a half or so.
Year and a half? Okay, that's a fairly recent sale compared to the other.
You're talking the C Street parcel or the north of 4th Street?
The Willow Point, the north of,
Yeah, yeah. Well, anyway, it's just an observation, and I don't think it's the place for low-income housing. It's a perfect opportunity, and the reason I speak of that is I've been traveling by World Mart in Nice for the last year, and am floored with the amount of business that place brings in. Absolutely floored. And I think that would be a perfect opportunity for Lakeport, because I think we have a beautiful town, and we have a little more, I think, to offer than that area. That's about it.
Let me ask one more thing, because it complicated that. So, although the recommendation in the report is that central location for the hotel to kind of leverage existing business, it'd be easier for us to do it up by the existing. But I'm just thinking, because I don't want to set up another low-income housing thing with an RV park necessarily, if you were to anchor the hotel somewhere in the Willow Point sector, it wouldn't be as cool as the existing downtown blocks, but I'm also thinking of South Main Street and a lot of vacant inventory there. Wouldn't there be a little trickle-down effect from locating it
Well,
there?
and that's
Big
why we
time.
set up the plan to have options. So, that we kind of identified key areas where hotel might be appropriate. We're not thinking that hotels are going to develop at each of those sites.
No.
But
We're not even saying it's going to be an RV park, it's just a drawing.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a
it's a
possibility.
conceptual
And we're
plan.
not at the point of signaling anything to the city council or anyone else about our druthers about if the hotel's gonna go up north, middle, or south, where it should go.
No, those would, this plan kind of outlines that these are areas to consider. And so, a developer looking at putting in a hotel, we would hand them this and kind of show this is where the community has sort of vetted these options. But no, it would be considered on its own merits, through our planning application process.
It's an opportunity.
Yeah, but we're not saying this is the only place a hotel can go, or this is the only use acceptable to the site is a hotel. We're listing it as an option.
Right. Or timeshare, etc.
And this motion is adequate to get us going on this, and it would incorporate any recommendations we made tonight?
If you want to amend it to include the recommendations, that's fine. I've been taking copious notes. I'll make sure that when we do our staff report for the city council, that it includes the discussions.
Okay.
Well, the only recommendation.
And there is a part of the contract, as part of this contract, there is a little cleanup that could take place after tonight's meeting.
Oh, really? Nice.
I
didn't know about that clause.
So before we go to the city council, we make modifications necessary.
I do have one question so far as the gravitas of this report. Can it be used to help get funding to repair some of the lakefront, i.e. the shoreline and the seawall and that kind of stuff, once this is adopted?
Absolutely, yes.
Outstanding.
We have been successful in getting grants in the past, but a lot of times, it's either a requirement, a prerequisite, or you gain extra points for having documents like this. So this will certainly strengthen our position on that.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm ready to make a motion, and the only thing I'd like to hard code in it is the contiguous nature of that central commercial district.
Yeah, that would just be a modification to page 69.
61 and 69.
And 68, 69. So with that, unless there's more discussion, I'll make a motion that we adopt a resolution to approve the Lakeport Lakefront Revitalization Plan, including any revisions that may come up during this hearing, or that any revisions that did come up during this hearing. How's that go? Does that work?
That's good.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a first from Commissioner Green. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a second. Linda, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Forio,
Here. Aye.
Commissioner Green,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Wicks,
Aye.
Chair Taylor.
Aye. We will now forward it over to the city council.
If I can just take one opportunity as part of this lakefront revitalization plan, as part of the contract, this is the last public meeting that Design Workshop will be at. And in behalf of Kevin and I, we'd like to thank Design Workshop, especially Steve Knoll here today, Brian Fish, and Gina Monticello. They've done a great job, and it's been a blast working with them. It's been really interesting. We'd also like to thank the Rinkin consultants as well as BAE who were involved with this. And I'd like to thank the Lunas family for letting us put some of the posters in their window up on Main Street. And I think that's about it.
Great. No, I think it's a great thing, and let's hope we can see it to the end.
And I'd like to thank you too. I wouldn't have asked all these questions if you hadn't given me the fuel to do it. So, I appreciate that.
Hey, I wear the target all the time. Thanks.
Okay, now we're going to go back to item 6, item B, North Coast Opportunities, UP 17-01, AR 17-07, and CE 17-12. Application for a use permit for a preschool facility in the existing commercial building at 864 and 868 Lakeport Boulevard, Vista Point Shopping Center. A small architectural and design review for a fence, a storage structure, an arbor, on a commercial property further described as APN 025-472-05, and this is Dan.
Yes, North Coast Opportunities, their Head Start, it's a use permit 1701, and a small architectural review, design review 1707. The use permit is for a preschool facility at the Vista Point Shopping Center. The units would be located in currently 2 suites located in the shopping center, 864 and 868 Lakeport Boulevard. The project would also include a small architectural review and design review for a fence, a shade structure, and a storage structure on the commercial property. The project itself consists of a 2,200 square foot building that would include a classroom, offices, and a small kitchen area. In addition to that, it would also include a 2,666 square foot play area. I think if you look at your staff report, I believe I measured it out to 22,520. I was corrected by the applicant, and that's fine. And basically that would include play structures, a shade structure, and some storage buildings. The play area would be surrounded by a 6-foot fence, and in addition to that, there would be a 5-foot decorative fence assessing that play area. The number of students located at the place would include, located at the preschool would be 20 students. The average age of those would be from 3 to 5 years old, and it would also include 7 employees associated with the project. The hours of the operation for the preschool would be 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. And staff would like to make a quick correction. There's an existing Head Start in the shopping center for 1 to 3 year olds. When in your staff report, I thought it was also North Coast Opportunities, but I was corrected. The Sutter Lakeside operates the other facilities in that same shopping center. The general plan for the project was major retail, and the zoning for the project is C2, major retail. And under the C2 zoning district, it requires a use permit for a school, preschool, or any kind of type of child care. And in addition to that, it requires specific findings for that approval. And basically those findings include licensing and certification. Staff added a condition that prior to the beginning, they submit in all evidence that they've met all the state compliance with all the state regulations. Secondly, there's a maximum number of students and whether or not the building would be adequate. With 20 students, staff made a determination that in all probability would be adequate. The outdoor play area have a thirdly, the outdoor play area have a 6-foot fence. The project includes a 6-foot fence, and the hours of operation, which would be, as stated earlier, 7:30 to 5:30 p.m.
All right.
And not finished yet. Designate. One of the other thing is designate turnaround and parking. Basically, this is a shopping center. There's plenty of circulation. That shouldn't be a problem. And item number 6, one of the last criteria would be fire safety. Staff is part of your conditions of approval, have that they require all conditions from the fire marshal and inspections associated with the school, and that would be required at the type of prior to the final of the building permit. The project includes architectural design review. It's basically that would be required for the commercial fence enclosing the playground, as well as the fence for accessing that playground. In addition, there would be a shade structure and an 80 square foot bike and outdoor equipment storage building located behind the building, as well as in the play area, the fenced-in play area. The minor architectural design review would be behind the buildings, so it would not represent a significant visual impact. The 5-foot decorative fence along the front would be somewhat visible from the parking lot, but this is a little bit more of an attractive fence than a chain link. The 6-foot chain link would be, well, as stated earlier, would be required for safety as well as be located in the rear of the project, and property would be kind of screened by existing buildings and would not create a significant visual impact. Associated with the parking on this property, there would be a loss of 10 parking spaces with the construction of that play area. The center has adequate parking at this point in time. One of the issues that came up about this property is the primary commercial building currently does not have a roof. That's approximately 26,000 square feet, which would equate into 104 parking spaces. At any time in the future, when they submit an application to rebuild that roof, we would require a architectural design review as part of the construction, and at that time we'd evaluate the parking needs for that overall shopping center. The agency comments for the referrals review were sent to the building official, public works, fire department, and the police department, as well as the county health department. The conditions that were incorporated would reflect the compliance with the use permit standards. And staff just received a modified memo from the health department, and basically originally, if you look at your page for agency discussion, they were talking about the health department reviewing for the food preparation. However, there are other regulations that exempt the health department from preparation of food in a school district for schools of this nature, so they probably would not require any permits from the health department, but we will still send a building permit to them or notification when it's available. Under the California Environmental Quality Act, the project is category exempt under 15303 and E. That basically exempts small structures, fences. Like I said, the existing office buildings are being converted to a school, and there's no environmental impact associated with that. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the use permit and the small architectural and design review application subject to the conditions of approval in your staff report as far as attachment B. And that concludes staff presentation.
Okay. Any questions of staff?
I do. On the playground area, there's a creek back there. And because this is dealing with children, did you say that there's going to be just a chain link fence back there, 6 foot?
6 foot chain link fence all the way around the play area, yes.
Where is the area that is not chain link?
In the front. Basically, the only reason for a decorative fence is to get the kids from this classroom over to the play area.
Okay.
So that doesn't really, the 5 foot decorative fence doesn't really represent anything, but the 6 foot fence surrounds the entire play area.
And there's a separate 6 foot gate if you look at your
Yeah,
site
I
plan,
see
kinda
that.
separating those areas out.
And the reason I asked about that, I used to do licensing for daycares. Anyway, a long time ago. That whole area is very, very remote, and along the creek and everything. And the shopping center, it's the back of the shopping center. We do have a quasi-homeless population, and I would like to see a little bit more protection visually for those children, and whether the rest of the staff agrees that we could put a higher fence there, and I would like to see a non-visual area for those children so that they could not be seen by anybody that might be around that back area. I mean, I checked it out. You guys check it out, see what you think, whether or not you think it warrants it. But these days with children, you can't be too careful.
I knew that there were some homeless there, but I'm not sure. Somebody would have to check with the chief. I believe that they've been asked to leave that area.
You're right. Well, asking and
No, I think that they've enforced it.
forced
but,
out. Okay.
I don't know that for sure. It should be asked.
Right. Well, the point is that they are aware of the area. It is very remote. It's something that if I were homeless, I'd be hanging out there too because it looks like a nice area. But I don't think it's a place for children to be seen or have, be able to see what they might see.
Perhaps you can, when the applicant comes up, you can ask them, but I'm looking at their project map and site plan, and I'm not sure how far back that actually goes.
It goes pretty far back.
How much space is there with the edge of the concrete? And, I'm not opposed, but
I didn't see the square footage. It wasn't on here or that I noticed that how far it went back.
Yeah, there's still 5 parking
What's the total
spaces
square footage?
separating
I don't
them.
see.
Well, there's about 5 parking spaces and a access way that's kind of separates the,
yes, it doesn't go all the way up
back
to
to the creek, yeah.
to the end of the parking lot in the bank. But
As I recall when I walked it, it kind of drops right off there.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It does. I agree. And it's fairly wooded and it's fairly secluded, so that was my concern.
Question on parking, page 4. Any parking analysis that would be required should the other property be improved, that analysis would be required of the new applicant, not the current applicant, right?
No, it'd be, this is like saying in the future, when, like say they put a roof on the 26,000 square foot structure, well, that would take an architectural design review, and then we'd evaluate the parking analysis at that time. There's no.
That applicant wouldn't be able to come back and say, I need my 10 spaces now.
Well, you could. I mean, that's up to them to work out.
Is there a way to deflect that possibility? I mean, if we're going to approve this, if and when they put a roof on it, I say they can shoulder the burden. I don't want to have the child care facility necessarily be exposed to any abstract chance that parking has to get reviewed. If we're going to approve this, I'd like to
you
get
could,
that
because that's going to be, I don't know that we have the power to place those kind of conditions on a new property owner. I mean, a new property owner could say any use that's at the site is not appropriate to their vision. I don't think that they would do that. I mean,
There's lots of parking.
They would probably absorb it.
yeah, I mean, I personally think there's more than adequate amount
There's
of parking.
oodles of parking there.
For,
I think it should be an issue.
I think the parking circulation issue is not so much the amount of parking, it's the configuration of the parking right now. It's just a big giant
Empty
asphalt
space.
parking lot.
Yeah.
And from what I've heard too, there's some topography issues. So I mean, I think the parking analysis is going to be multifaceted. I don't think that we're going to run into a problem with the quantity or the total number of parking spaces.
And not to mention that, but this is not a place, these are drop-off children. The parents aren't parking there all day.
Right. No, but I mean,
No.
when you look at the specific standards that we have for preschools, it is very specific. It talks about turnarounds, which
Right.
makes sense.
Right.
But I think in this situation, you got
Lots of room.
adequate room
Right.
that, whether it be a turnaround or just place, you could have all 20 parents drop off their kids at the same time and not run into a circulation.
Right. I agree.
My question is, are they eliminating the parking places in front of the new play area? And could those parking places be brought back pretty easily? My concern would be a car coming and driving into the play area.
Well,
That's a possibility we could.
Well,
Yeah, it's, yeah.
The fence there, and I mean, in all reality, I mean, the parking, I've been back there several times. It's hard to discern where the parking spaces
Right.
physically are. I mean, it's deteriorated to, the lines aren't present, so, and basically the way the uses are set up, I don't know that there's a whole lot of people that would be going back there to utilize this parking area other than the folks that are going to the preschool, but
To that point, I had a similar question because I was thinking where are the pylons or where are the safety barriers that keep cars from just going right through that fence if they feel like it.
I agree.
Like parking or putting concrete
Because at,
planters
2
or
o'clock in the
something.
morning, as we've seen recently, where people are hot rodding around and running from the police and they go wherever they want to go, it is a potential issue.
Yeah, but they won't hit children at 2 o'clock in the morning.
That is not quite the point, sir. That is not quite the point. The point is that you have a structure that's being put into asphalt that's in an existing parking facility with a right-of-way delineation. So what is the barrier that prevents cars from, even if it's a simple cement bumper, right?
Or painting those places and having
Exactly right.
staff park
Yeah,
there.
exactly right.
It seems like that would
That's
kill
a
two
good
birds with
idea.
one
Yeah,
stone.
so that was gonna be my question.
Yeah,
is,
staff parking there would be a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, if there's like a, requirement of a bollard, it'd just be needed at the far northern side or something of that nature, because that's the only alley really. I mean, well, there's no painting out here, so, but. Open that for discussion.
Want to open it up?
Yeah, go on. Ready?
Well, but no, before that, I actually have one question about, who's responsible for the care of the building itself? Is it the tenant or is it the landlord?
for the actual, for the specific
Yeah,
unit.
For this unit.
I mean, that's gonna be an agreement between the property owner and the tenant.
Okay, because I went out there and I took a good look at it, as I usually do. And the back side, the east side of that is deteriorating, for one, and it's not flashed properly. Also, because it's daycare, there's a light that's an outdoor exterior light that's above the entire area that's got a burned out bulb on it. It's been that way for quite a long time. So when this gets done, who's responsible to make sure that this building is painted without having the graffiti on it and so on and so forth? So that's my question.
Well, they will be they will be submitting a building permit for the overall work on the building, and I'm sure that would include the exterior too of the building. I'm not sure.
I mean, if you've been out there, you've seen it, I took pictures of it. It's that corner, that south, or that northeast corner is deteriorating and eroding. And there is exposure of rebar there. So that's why I'm asking who's responsible.
And we'll just have to ask the applicant for what kind of rental agreement they have with the property.
But you can,
Right.
I mean, that's certainly within your purview to condition that be addressed, and then it's gonna be ultimately between the applicant and the property owner.
Right. Well, that's why I'm asking. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to open the public meeting. Would the applicant like to come up and speak for his project?
So, good evening, my name is Ron Moe, I'm the architect for the project. And I think I can address some of the questions that you asked. Before I do that, I want to thank you for having us at this meeting because it was quite informative to be here for the earlier part of the evening. So about the fence, Head Start doesn't have an issue if you want to make it taller. We don't feel like it's necessary. During the time that the kids are in the play yard, there's always adults in the play yard at the same time. They're always supervised. The fence on the fence adjoining the parking lot is on a concrete curb. That concrete curb, its height varies, but there is a curb, and the fence itself is, would be a barrier to cars.
You're talking about the 5-foot fence?
Yeah, the
or
6 foot chain link
6-foot fence also?
Yeah, that is. The chain fence is on the concrete curb. The decorative fence is on the sidewalks above which has got a curb as well. So it would be easy enough to put concrete bumper stops at each parking slot adjoining the fence if that were, desirable. I remember some of the other things that were brought up.
Well, in the wintertime, it gets dark at 5:30. You're gonna have some other exterior lighting at the corners by the park, by the play yard for the
Exactly.
children that are waiting for their parents to come pick them up, or,
The plan calls for 2 exterior lights at each corner of the north side of the building, up high. So we're not counting on the light fixture that's burned out.
okay?
As far as the rebar is concerned, we did some testing. We were concerned with the strength of the building, so we had a testing company measure the, for rebar, and we took out a couple of cells in the building. So that might be what you're seeing in terms of the exposed rebar, because
On the very northeast corner of the building itself.
Yes, we're
where
gonna be
it's-
putting in
the
a
fence
door.
Fence has been ripped back and all the erosion and the flashing is down in the ravine. That's what I'm talking about.
So, okay, well, we were concerned with that as well. We had a testing agency, a structural engineer, all involved. We exposed the footing, so we know that the footing was deep enough at that part of the building. We also, and then we tested, make sure that the rebar was, that we had a proper rebar, and we tested the compressive strength of the concrete, in the concrete block. In addition to that, we were concerned with the strength of the roof attachment to the concrete walls. So in that, we're going to reinforce in these 2 units that we're occupying.
The maintenance agreement, if you're reinforcing the roof, it sounds like you're self-helping maintenance in general. Is that the
Well,
understanding?
that's a structural aspect of the building. We won't be, I think that, I'm not part to the agreement with the owner, but I would suspect that he's responsible for the roof, for example. The storage building that we've discussed adjoins the north side of the building. It's 20 feet long, so it covers a good portion of the existing north side of the building. And it's, it would be almost, you'd see a little bit of the roof over the fence, but otherwise it's not very visible at all.
More of a shed than a cargo container.
Yeah. Well, that's going to come later after this.
Well, it's legal.
So you're the architect, so operational stuff like visual screening for the fence, security cameras, we wouldn't be asking you about that. We'd be asking somebody in the
No,
audience.
in terms of if you want visual screening, I've been told by the director here, Corinne, that, where they're willing to put slats in the chain link fence, if that's a major concern of yours.
Just a visual stop is my concern.
And you're not wanting the kids to see out or
Well,
homeless to see in.
precisely. I just don't think it's something they need to see, possibly see or whatever.
Well, the only counterpoint I would have is hopefully increased use of the area and increased patrols, because there's a use there now. It's probably going to take care of some of that, and I would hate necessarily, you don't want to box kids in and
No, I
feel like
agree.
they're,
It's
so.
very pretty.
That's my feeling, that
It is
there's a
pretty.
positive thing that the kids are, exposed to being able to look out at the trees and stuff,
Right,
and you'd be blocking their view.
I don't know, it's,
I'd be willing to defer to the occupant on that
yeah,
myself.
okay, that's fine.
Because that, the slats could always be added.
Yeah, if it's a
it became
problem, then address it. Since it isn't, and you don't feel like it would be, and I totally agree that it's important for children to be able to see something green like that.
Any other questions to the applicant?
Like you said, something pertaining to the structural elements, I don't know who would address that. Since is that part of the shopping center owned by one person?
Correct.
Okay, because since there's no roof and all that, it's a lot of deferred maintenance and the roof fell in, I would be concerned with that particular roof area.
Sounds like they were too. It sounds like that's why you guys performed.
Right, but I didn't say it wasn't it wasn't part of your thing, but it is part of the tenant agreement. So I would like to see that make sure that that particular part was written into the lease and we know about it. I wouldn't want to see that roof fall in on.
We're having our building official going out and making inspections
Excellent.
on this property. I mean, because they are submitting a building
Right.
permit for
Gotcha.
the work to be done on the property.
Okay.
And I'm sure he's
Just make
gonna
sure
take
that's
a
covered.
look at that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Tom's
you.
here, and I don't think there's anybody in the room who's probably aware of those issues on that site.
Right, better, good. We know he'll take care of it. Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you
Thank-
say your last name, please?
MEAUX.
MEAUX is your last name? Okay, thank you.
It's on the app.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak for or against this project? Well, with that not saying, I'm going to close the public meeting, and I'll bring it back to commissioners for a motion. And we're going to have 3 of them. Categorical exemption approval.
There's a couple of other sort of things floating out there I'm not sure you want to kind of discuss and get solidified. Sounds like, I don't want to guide the discussion, but it sounds like leaving slats off for the meantime, but sounds like there was some mention about barriers between that fence. The applicant has brought up the curb stops.
Well, I personally would like to see, just from my perspective, I'd like to see some sort of curb stop or some sort of preventative measure from cars going through the chain link fence in that area, because it is, again, that's the backside access for 18
And
wheelers.
it's open right to the parking lot.
Right, and so, right, it's open right to it, so that would be, I think, a simple, common sense measure. It's my opinion.
Do I have a motion or of any of
I
these?
think that's a
Well,
consensus. more than
consensus
anything.
That's more of a consensus.
Okay.
I understand in the abstract that could happen, but I think in real life, it's probably a fairly low risk. And again, just like with visual screening, if it becomes an issue, the applicants can certainly bring it up, and we could require it, but it seemed to me, government agencies, not a lot of funds, anything we can do to streamline this and make it less expensive, I think is probably better for the applicant and getting the kids in there as quick as possible.
I think we've got children on the playground, and there are minimal measures that can be done to make them safer.
Okay.
There was also discussion on the fence height. I didn't know if that would have been,
Everybody good with 6? Or you want to make it a little higher?
I was good with 6.
Six is
They're
fine.
little.
That's true.
They're little kids.
Yeah, 6 is fine.
I'm thinking about the little kids.
Yeah, I've seen that encampment, and I've been back there and seen it disappear. And I don't know if it's
pretty-
gone now, but I believe that the
it
chief
it is gone, and it's something that we can do.
Yeah, I believe that the
It will
chief
be monitored.
watches that, yeah.
Right. Good.
Feral cats, for that matter, too.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's true.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of them.
Lots.
So are we good with staff?
Yeah, I think we've made the note there, the recommendation for the curb stops. We can incorporate that into the conditions.
Did you get a consensus on that?
Yeah, we can just, right now, just all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so it's a
No.
consensus.
I don't know if you want to open the public meeting real quick and just make sure that that is okay with that, but it sounded like they indicated they were okay with that.
Michael isn't.
It's okay, it can be 4-1.
It's fine, it can be 4-1
It can be
consensus.
4-1.
The consensus is
Yeah,
there.
I
The
think that's
consensus is
4-1.
there, yeah.
Chair? Or one, unless you
Okay.
are. Are you okay?
Yes.
Okay.
And that will come up on the third motion.
Okay.
Any
How
others?
about some motions?
I'll do some motions.
Okay.
'Cause I
Do
love
them all
to-
the time.
You want to do them?
I want to hear
Well, now
Michael.
you want to do them? All right, come on. All right, categorical exemption approval. I move that the planning commission find that UP 17-01 and AR 17-07 as applied for by North Coast Opportunities, Inc. is categorically exempt pursuant to section 15303E of the CEQA guidelines.
Okay, Linda, would you call the roll, please? Or I have a first from Commissioner Green, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
And I have a second for Commissioner Foil. Now, Linda, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Wicks?
Aye.
Commissioner Russell?
Aye.
Commissioner Green?
Aye.
Commissioner Froyo?
Aye.
Chair Taylor?
Aye. Okay, use permit approval.
I'll do the use permit approval. I move that the planning commission find that the use permit applied for by North Coast Opportunities, Inc. on property located at 864 and 868 Lakeport Boulevard meet the requirements of sections 17.10.050.G and 17.24.110.L of the Lakeport zoning ordinance, consistent with the objectives and policies of the Lakeport general plan, and subject to the project conditions of approval, attachment B, and with the findings listed in the August 9th, 2017 staff report,
As amended today.
as amended today.
I have a first from Commissioner Russell. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Commissioner Wilks. Linda, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Froyo?
Aye.
Commissioner Green?
Aye.
Commissioner Russell?
Aye.
Commissioner Wicks?
Aye.
Chair Taylor?
Aye. Okay, architectural and design review.
All right,
On you, Michael.
if he doesn't want to do it, I'll do it.
Thank you, Ken.
I move that the planning commission find that the architectural and design review application is applied for by North Coast Opportunities Incorporated on property located at 864 and 868 Lakeport Boulevard does meet the requirements of section 1727.080 of the Lakeport zoning ordinance, consistent with the objectives and policies of the Lakeport general plan, and subject to the project conditions of approval, attachment B, and with the findings listed in the August 9th, 2017 staff report.
As amended today.
As amended today.
As amended. I have a first from Commissioner Wilks. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Commissioner Froyo.
Green.
And it passes 5-0. Thank you.
Oh,
You gotta call the vote.
Let's vote.
Oh.
Let's vote here.
Linda, please call the roll.
Commissioner Froyo?
Aye.
Commissioner Green?
Aye.
Commissioner Russell?
Aye.
Commissioner Wicks?
Aye.
Chair Taylor?
All right. Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Good project. Thank you.
Yes, as someone who's recently tried to find preschools in our area, this
You're
is definitely a needed facility within the community. And thank you guys for your patience. We know that just timing-wise was important. We ultimately wanted to kind of keep the lakefront plan on its own, but there were some timing reasons that we wanted to get this project in today. So, congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on to item 7, correspondence, planning projects pending. List of the current planning department pending approval as of August 3rd, 2017.
we're making progress on most of these. I mean, unfortunately, we're not seeing a whole lot of new stuff come in, but you know, our attention has been very much on this one here. So I just want to thank you guys. I think it was a very good discussion this evening. We'll make sure that we get all those things in. We'll make you guys aware of the date that it's scheduled for the planning commission.
You mean
For the city council.
City council.
I think tentatively we're looking at one of the dates in September, the latest, the first one in October. But the other items, I think number 8 there, your cross-development Dollar General. As you guys are aware, I think they kind of made it pretty clear when they left here that they would be filing an appeal. They did, and that item will be heard by the city council at their regular meeting next week, August 15th.
Did you say 15th?
August 15th, correct.
Next week.
How are we doing on item number 1? Hasn't it been almost a year now?
Oh, gosh.
You
Yes.
know, and 3 or 4 times I think the excuse was that it's city's fault, or city is.
It's
dragging
still
its
very
heels.
much the city's fault. I mean, there's,
Uh-huh.
you know,
So is the city gonna put in sidewalks for us now?
Where?
where?
I have an
Right.
address.
Not on that one.
Not right now? So, okay, so all kidding aside, where's it stand?
It's still in the same. I mean, I've got a limited amount of staff. We've been putting our efforts on this lakefront plan and giving the attention to the existing applications. We've had a flood of, which is good.
Right.
But last week alone, I think, well, Tom's not here, I think we took in, 18 permits. So we're trying to get those turned out.
His permit is a demolition permit, right?
His
Some of
permit
those
is a demolition.
are very
permit.
large.
Some of them are larger permits, yeah.
Right.
So it's
Hey,
on the
he's a
radar. I don't like saying that. I've said that several months now in a row. But it is what it is.
Basically on that project, it was like through the winter, there was, the building official was focusing on flooding. Then Mr. Feifel had some health issues that I guess he was out for a while. Then they just haven't really been able to cross paths. They've been trying to contact each other, or Tom has been trying to contact him.
And Tom has been, his attention's been quite divided in, he's basically our project representative for the Carnegie project, and then he's been very active in the Willow Point
Right.
rebuild portions of it too. So just,
Are they going to rebuild the,
they're repairing their sewer system at this point, and
Sewer
the other
system.
thing too is they're finally finishing the completion of their bridge.
bridge? Yeah, that's state though,
Well, but it's all on the,
state regs.
it's, state regs, but Tom being the floodplain advisor has quite a large role in making sure that that bridge is indeed compliant with all floodplain regulations.
Yeah, it's been rickety for a long time.
So, and as Dan mentioned, the FEMA stuff, which is picking up speed, keeping our eye on that as a floodplain coordinator. It's just tough when you have one building person who is responsible for plans examination, answering questions at the counter, and doing building inspections. So
Yeah.
it is on the radar. I know you're tired of me saying that. Believe me, I will be up here rallying that we got it done right when it gets done. But at this point, it's still sitting unchanged.
Isn't there an administrative position that's opening up?
There is, we do, that's also on the August 15th agenda. But we're looking at bringing on a permit tech position, which will include some assistance primarily to Tom. And then, but also a large element to that's going to be code enforcement as well, an area that we all know we don't have specific folks on.
We're bringing code enforcement?
Well, it's not a code enforcement position in its
Per se.
entirety. It's a permit technician position, but the job description does include some code enforcement items as well. But looking at it, as a succession planning tool, the primary concern to our department is making sure that Tom isn't the only one capable of doing some of these things.
Well, you guys have done some pretty nasty code enforcement things over the past year, though.
Yeah, and we've done pretty good. I mean, I think it's worth noting, because
We don't talk about those things.
avoiding Geiselman the other day, I went down Green Street, and
Right.
one of our very problematic properties are at 2260 Green Street that we abated last year is looking pretty good. Same with 767 3rd Street. So there is stuff going on, but there's a long list. I mean, we have some
Right.
key things that we just unfortunately haven't been able to put direct attention to because we don't have the staff numbers. But this isn't going to be
No, it's not nirvana.
the only, but it is going to help. It's certainly going to help.
As far as that code enforcement goes, do we have administrative citations in place for that?
For
For the
which one?
offenders?
We do have an administrative penalties procedure.
Okay, and does it have a little bit of teeth?
Yep.
Okay.
Start charging you $100 first offense, $200 the second offense, where you're getting up to $500 in the third offense. We use it for our fire weed abatement program. And then the PD is very supportive too. I mean, they've assisted quite a bit, and they write administrative citations directly out in the field. So it's a citywide effort.
How does that work with the car lot that's right across the street from Funderburg's there at Lakeport Tire? Because it's now a used car lot.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No.
It's been a used car lot.
It's not good.
Wasn't
It's just
it,
not good.
Yeah, and I've had discussions with that owner that that's not appropriate. So it's just a matter of keeping the attention on it.
Why don't we get some tax income from it?
You still got to have someone to go out there and do it. That's where we're stuck at this point.
or a permit to have a car for it, a car, you know? I mean,
Or a citation.
that's like, well, what it costs
Just
us,
put it right on the window.
$100 a piece.
Well, we've
We'll
done
be able to
that.
build this park and.
Right, I was gonna say, I'd like to vote to make it a little
There's your
bit
funding.
tougher.
Well, I mean, and to that credit, I mean, it's not like it hasn't been done. I mean, the PD do a very good job of policing that, you know, our vacant lot there, right down Lakeport Boulevard. We get every once in a while cars advertising there. The PD does a good job. So I can talk to the chief
Well,
and,
they're close now.
they're what?
They're very close
Yeah, they can
now.
walk right down there
Well, yeah.
Not tough.
on a lunch break.
Yeah.
All right, I'll kidding.
Anyway, thank you very much for the code
Yeah,
enforcement that
thank
you
you.
have done, because I know it's additional, and we've had some really,
The key to
Tough
code,
stuff
the
for you
key,
guys.
the real key to code enforcement, having done it for a long time, is the consistency. And unfortunately, that's complicated when we've got a small staff that's eyes are in a bunch of different areas. You know, so getting someone who can sort of coordinate that, that's not, you know, I know,
well, Linda's available.
you know, we,
What
yeah.
would they do without me is the actual
Not,
question.
they would collapse. Totally.
The rest of the department. would
Yeah, we
be
don't
on hold.
allow Linda out of the building, because then it all falls
Linda is
apart.
not allowed to be ill or anything else.
Okay, well, we've pretty much covered then item 8, because our little discussion we just had.
Oh,
If
are we
there's
at
any
7 or
more
8?
commissioners that would like to,
Weigh in.
Are we at 7 or 8? I thought we were at 7.
We're just finished 7 now.
We're at 7.
Go ahead.
Now we're going to 8.
Aye.
All right. Very quickly, I did want to share that I was down in Fresno last week, my hometown, living the dream, and we were talking about cannabis regulation, and I just mentioned it because it will come up before us at some point, it will come before the city council at some point. And what was interesting was there were two things. One was a planning commission meeting on Wednesday, and then a city council meeting on Thursday, which was so dysfunctional I won't even go into. But the city is proposing a total ban on all types of commercial activities, adult use, medicinal. They don't even know what they want. At least that's what the city council told them to do. When it showed up before the planning commission, they said, oh yeah, we're going to ban all those commercial activities except for testing labs. And it's like, oh, where did that come from? And before they even had the discussion, one of the planning commissioners stood up, recused himself, and walked off without even explaining why, which I thought was kind of odd on a couple levels, because, you know, a month ago, they were, you know, fire and brimstone and evil weed, and next thing you know, well, it's all evil except testing labs, and then I got a planning commissioner recusing himself. And so I did a little digging. He's apparently an owner of a security company. He's probably guarding some illegal dispensaries now, and/or he has an interest in the testing lab that may or may not happen down in Fresno. So it's just fascinating, because when you say never, even in Fresno, things are changing on the basis of this. And then in terms of this body, I just want to assure you that I don't see any potential for a conflict of interest at this point based on any of my contacts in the industry. But I want to tell my fellow commissioners and staff that if it comes up, I am absolutely not only going to recuse myself, I will disclose why after discussing it with staff and any attorney that needs to. I feel that transparency is hugely important as this new industry unfolds. And although I'm encouraged to see Fresno take any little baby step toward it, it was a little discouraging to see exactly how that was happening. And I do appreciate each of you as being equally candid, and I'm happy to be here. But it was just kind of odd to observe, and I want you to know that I can't guarantee it won't happen here, but any recusal on my part, you'll know about very early.
And just to update on that point, yes, you will be getting some cannabis ordinance revisions coming to you shortly. We're given some things, finishing this up that's become another priority. We want to try and get at least the cultivation stuff completed by the end of the year. We're having a meeting with our working group, looking over a red line draft, and then it's our hope that we'll get that scheduled back before you guys to take a look at that. And also making strides on looking at the commercial aspects as well. So that's coming forward.
I have a question for staff. I, for one, was absolutely thrilled to have Michael join our planning commission, because I know nothing about the cannabis ordinances or much else about the whole situation. And I'm quite maybe it's out of line, but I'm quite comfortable with Michael having a very fair and equitable, unbiased opinion, and he's 1 vote out of 5. And I want and encourage him to inform us of the laws.
I don't think there's any question there, but I think what he's stating, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that if there is a true viable, conflict of interest where he has an economic stake in something like that,
I get that.
he's stating very forefront, which I'm very appreciative of.
Yes.
Not only will he recuse himself, he's
Right.
going to tell us why.
Right.
Which
No,
At
that's
this
good.
point, don't hold your breath, because the local community is interesting. And one thing that I do appreciate that this city is doing that Fresno is not, is keeping the issues separate of personal cultivation and all the commercial stuff.
Right.
Because for whatever reason, Fresno plowed ahead with both on a single vote on a package bill that dealt with their personal cultivation, and they tried to do the adult use ban. And surprise, surprise, when it came up for subsequent votes, they didn't even know what they were talking about half the time. When we talked about the recreational plants under Prop 64, we talked about dispensaries.
6 plants or 600?
That is literally, so the city council meeting where they were just talking about the ordinance, they still couldn't figure out if they were talking about dispensaries or whatever.
That's my
So,
point.
that
Oh,
was-
goodness.
We just reviewed the county's tentative ordinance, and it's not gonna be as, it's almost 96 pages, I think, at this point in time.
What gives you something to do, Dan?
Well,
Well,
ours
same
is
thing.
gonna be much shorter. I think
You have
that's-
time reading?
Yeah.
Has the state even come to a conclusion yet? I mean, they're vacillating on a couple of things. I mean, and I know that last year you had that deadline that you had to submit in order to not take penalty, but at the same time, there was no conclusion. So now they're coming up with January 1st implementation.
I think there's
Have they
enough-
figured it out?
I think there's enough information
Yeah.
to keep moving forward, but you're right, I think it's an ever-evolving process, and, we very well could adopt our ordinance and something change and
Right.
have to
Yeah.
make amendments
And-
to it in short order.
At the end of June, it looks like the state kind of came up with their SB 94, which kind of clarifies the use between, they kind of separated medical and adult use a little bit clear, and they gave a brand new acronym, the Amariskira or something.
What's
Yeah.
that?
It's it's
Medical
adult
and
and
adult
medicinal
Oh,
use, adult use and medical, but it goes on forever.
It's crazy, it's helpful though. at
Yeah,
least.
so it's helpful, and I think we'll be probably looking towards, fall, we'll probably have something in the commercial aspect.
Oh, and I will share that this came up in multiple meetings I've heard, and when the first medical law rolled out a couple years ago, there was a January 1 deadline that everyone was tripping over, and they later repealed that. But under SB 94, if I understand right, there's at least provision on the state level that you could pull a state license and operate in a jurisdiction that had not expressly chosen to regulate or ban.
Correct.
And I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the rumor that all the local governments are freaking out. So
Yes.
now we have a new January 1 deadline that may or may not exist in fact, because I think local control always applies. I mean, but there seems to be some wrinkle that SB 94 threw in there that would allow, for example, a state licensed delivery service to operate in the city absent an ordinance prohibiting that activity.
We're very aware of that deadline.
So there may be a need for a moratorium or some type of, at least a placeholder
A
regulatory
placeholder,
ordinance to do something about that if that's true.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's true.
And you're absolutely correct. We're monitoring that situation very carefully. I'm with you. I don't think that it gets rid of our police powers completely, but yet at the same time, we have to be cautious of it. So we're keeping our eye on those developments very carefully.
Okay. That's all I have.
Anything else? Here's your chance.
Affordable housing.
Okay, we'll discuss next meeting, September the 13th. This meeting is adjourned.
Yay!